So good. So good.
All right, let's talk.
Used to my company. Yeah, cool. About 7.5 years.
How many times did you go over there?
Been to Columbia 9 times. Brazil.
What did you do there?
Well, cool.
Hey there, Sarah.
Big long one there said, I'm holding the coast to it.
Okay, we wrinkled.
Just walked up and smacked it.
Took a coffee guy down there because we were.
He said,
So we were with these guys. Said he probably.
you all told me it was
Like 2. I was
right in the spring of December. Yeah.
Like, he's like, dude, it's old. When the prices were every 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah, but that one.
Yeah, ridiculous. And so they let somebody else. Jacqueline, I was like, all that way. Oh, anyway. You got to go break the limits. It is what it is, but yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean,
Brian said she were unopposed. I wrote in Daffy Duck. Was I even on? You didn't. You didn't get it. If I'm gonna lose, I damn it want to do it done. I want to lose that.
yeah. So like,
You know what?
we were.
Set a certain amount. Oh, I lost to a duck.
Something's not right.
That's on the ballot. You can unopposed. You can just select, or you could write in something. I did, and I was like, you should just write in a random. He didn't get 100. Anybody, anybody.
Figure out what was.
Add on to the other side.
Did you do it here? Okay. I have not been over there yet. Walk right in there. I didn't have any problem. Walk right in, scan my ID. Well, you don't.
I got stories galore.
No, it's. I figure if I go during the middle of the day, like I drive home and I drive right lunch.
We're gonna go ahead and get started with the City of Centerton Board of Zoning Adjustments for November 1st, 2022. With a roll call.
Jeff Safar.
Here.
Brendan Swoboda.
Here.
Joey Engel.
Here.
Evan Murphy.
Here.
Kate Langford, Jerry Harris.
Here.
John Tessam.
Here.
Ben Lewis.
Here.
Tony Davis.
All right, first thing on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from 10/18 of 2022.
John, a motion to approve the minutes from 10/18/2022.
Jerry, a second.
Motion is second. Is anyone opposed? The next BZA meeting will be as needed. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make most of the adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Is anyone opposed? All right, next we'll get started with the City of Centerton Planning Commission meeting for November 1st, 2022 with a roll call.
Jeff Safar.
Here.
Brendan Swoboda.
Here.
Joey Engel. Evan Murphy. Craig Langford. Jerry Harris. John Tessam.
Here.
Ben Lewis. Tony Davis.
All right, first thing on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from 10/18 of 2022.
Motion to approve the minutes for 10/18/2022.
Motion in a couple seconds. Anyone opposed? All right, next on the agenda is the ratification of the admin approvals. There are 3. Are there any questions or comments from any of the commissioners or staff in regards to any of the admin approvals? If there are not, then I would entertain a motion to approve the ratification for the admin approvals.
I'll motion to approve the ratification of admin.
John, a second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, under old business this evening, we have subdivision 2113 Daisy Road duplexes. It's at the northeast corner of Brookside and Daisy Road. For the discussion, the request to extend a preliminary subdivision approval. The owner is Sweet Homes of NWA. I saw Dirk here. Did you have a request or anything you want to tell us?
Well, it was approved last October. And then we went through several iterations of trying to make changes or not make changes. We circled all the way back around to where we started. And then there was a change of who was running the project was let go. And so then that took some time. And then once they worked through everything and we got ready to get going, break ground, it's like, all right, we're out of time. So the year ran out. So it was kind of one delay after another, but no proposed changes, just proposing to extend the timeline so we can now move forward with pulling the SWIP and then starting the process for getting the Department of Health move forward with starting the construction.
Donna, do you want to go over any staff comments?
Yes, so when it was approved last October, there were still some outstanding staff comments, so we took a look at it again. Alan is the new engineer, so since he hadn't taken a look at it, he did take a look. He has some concerns about the drainage that he looked at with it going directly into the recycling center across the street. There was the lot 13 concerns which we had discussed last approval. So there are some of those concerns that we still have. That there are some things that staff would like to look at some more, and it was approved by Planning Commission last year. So with it, looking at it again, if you all do approve it, it would be, contingent on addressing those remaining items. Alan, if you have anything you want to add, what you'd like to see.
That over the draining concerns.
So the pipe that is existing, there's an existing 18-inch pipe that cuts across Daisy Road underneath and discharges into the recycling center. On the west side of the recycling center where it gets lower, they have flooding issues. They have issues where they can't really get down there. They just kind of use it as storage for now. With the development, the rates aren't going to change, but the total volume of runoff increases. So any flooding issue they have right there is going to get worse just by the added runoff. So having it maintained with the existing discharge rate, no other changes, you're going to make that downstream worse for them. There's already a bit of an issue where it goes underneath that other drive where some erosion. So you'd be looking at wanting to see changes to that pond, whether that means decreasing the discharge rate to more significantly below the existing rate. So that water has a chance to escape the recycling center without flooding them, or relocating that outlet to discharge in front, and they'd have to do upgrades along that ditch line. So it can go through without impacting or the back side. How they want to discharge around doesn't matter, but right now I see it creating not significant, but creating negative impacts on the recycling center that just becomes an issue down the road that who's gonna have to take care of it fixed. Or we can fix it now in the design.
So if we approve the extension, then it would be on the contingency for drainage.
Well, I know the one thing, that's one of the ones they were talking about changing before they spoke to me months ago about probably relocating that outlet as well. So I mean, if they blanket extension, I would be very leery about. You gotta grant that.
The recycle is interested in essence, giving an easement so that that water can be changed to the corner.
Looked at that, so depending on how you guys approve it. You mentioned, I think her name's Wendy with the recycling center. To meet with her to discuss how we can move forward as well, to kind of expedite any kind of work they do on that pond.
We could approve a contingent on your approval based on the drainage, correct? I mean, you,
Yeah, it just depends on what changes that may be made. How significant that would change the other plan. The one option, like I said, if you leave the outlet where it is and decrease the discharge rate, the pond's gonna have to be bigger.
instead of tank.
So would you want to see it if he has to or alter the layout? Or, that's where it becomes,
I suppose you haven't played with it at all, you know, if it's gonna alter the layout. You haven't played with it to know if it's gonna alter the layout yet, have you?
No, and right now relocating the outlet structure is not problematic at all. I don't think so. I think that's all doable. I think ownership having to decrease the size of the pond to decrease that would mean that the easy solution for that is to lose a lot. Ownership would have strong concerns with that. So I think just reworking how it discharges, I don't think they're at, that's all well and good. There's no issues with that. I'm not inclined to lose a lot though.
I mean, to me, it looks like they got some serious detention time. They got 2 double runs of pipes coming in and 1 single 18 coming out. I mean, I completely understand the downstream impact, but what kind of metric can you give design to when they're only required to meet pre versus post?
that's not the only requirement though.
No, I understand, but how do you know that you have an adequate design?
They have to analyze it through the recycling center to see what that ponding is in that recycling center. You're not gonna bypass it around. If it's already flooding and now because of adding discharge, it's gonna flood for longer or flood deeper in drainages they have, that's them imposing a native impact on the neighbor downstream.
So is the flooding on the recycle center, what's that cost from? Was that any by their own doing? Like, are we imposing regulations to fix other private problems?
The
Yes,
flooding on the recycle center is primarily due to the pipe that was installed underneath Daisy. You basically have a lot of water moving towards one point, and then some point in time, somebody channelized it to a very specific point, which causes erosion. The size of our pond has little to do, I shouldn't say little to do, but it's not completely due to the rooftops causing the size of the pond. This pond is very large for the rooftops that you see here. What's going on has very little to do with the houses and has everything to do with the water coming from upstream of us. So we're taking all this water and then having to account for it. Where before what was happening, it was this whole site was sort of using it as a holding area.
I completely agree. We don't want to make anything help where we can.
I think our concerns early on was that was where the water was always going and we're not changing the channel. We were just making sure that it was staying in the same pattern, but we were meeting all the guidelines and sizing the pond accordingly. I mean, this is not at all where we started. When we first started, this pond was probably half this size. And then we just it kept growing and growing because we're running the numbers to get to the point where it meets all the criteria. That again, because of all the water coming from upstream. So moving the discharge point, if that starts fixing the issue, that's not problematic at all. I mean, that would be fine looking at all of that and looking at a better way of discharging it.
I mean, it sounds like we could probably look at a few things and see if we can make it better. More than likely, probably gonna end up back here anyway, right?
No, shouldn't be. If I understand this correctly, we would get the extension would be approved. It's an approved project, but it couldn't move into construction without the last items being addressed by the city. So we would resubmit to engineering and work through that. He would say, yes, that's good. That doesn't mean it comes back towards you guys.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I just don't know at what point if it starts getting, you lose a lot or the layout changes, that it comes back.
And that's a design change that would have to come back.
It doesn't necessarily have to come back. But. I mean, I'm okay.
You good with that, Alan? If the design doesn't change on the number of lots, would you be okay with you being able to approve the drainage?
Yeah, if we can, if you guys don't care if we reconfigure a bit and so the total number doesn't change. If we can work with them to do that. In order to alleviate any kind of drainage concerns, their big concern is not losing one. You have to do any kind of manipulation if, as long as, you know, the number right there. The number of lots.
The number, no, sorry. I didn't-
For a second, let me.
As long as it meets the code, I don't know why we would need to see it.
As long as it's not a variant.
It's 20 lots. And then the one detention lot.
Really, if you think about it, we're only bringing it back just so we can verify that hey, it meets the code. Well, so.
The other reason I say is because with lot 13, there's. That double inlet there as well. It. 2 units, you have a 15-foot drive. So.
You don't have water. I thought it was like 10 or 12 feet. And if you're,
Oh, the transition for the extension, yeah,
have
so
the water
that's where there
meters.
might be some. A little more manipulation as well. To make this work. That was the other concern was with that box. So we might have to adjust that as well.
I mean, I'm okay approving it with the staff comments and as long as it meets the code. I don't know why it would need to come back. Are you okay with that, Derek?
I mean, and at any point, if there's a concern, obviously, we can put it as a discussion item on the agenda. I mean, if there's something that y'all beat each other up about, and we need to make a decision on it, then we can bring it back.
Single car garages.
Yes. My memory, sorry, I'm not, obviously, I'm not on the architectural end of it and just going back from memory, that's what I remember.
Derek, did it change firms? Because we have the original letter from CEI, is that right?
Well, Morrison Shipley ceased to exist and became Half Associates.
The letter I have is from CEI.
I don't know about that.
That was the city engineer at the time,
Oh, that was their comment.
since it was a
Gotcha.
Shipley project, CEI.
That's making more sense.
Sorry, yes. I understand.
Does anybody have a concern approving it contingent upon being able to work out the drainage? That help you out? Are there any questions? All right. If there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to extend the subdivision 2113 day zero duplexes. Of course, with the contingency that the agreement can be reached as far as engineering in regards to drainage and any other remaining staff comments.
It's John, I'll motion to extend subdivision 2113. With the alignment of city engineering for the drainage concerns. Without any staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? Thanks. All right, we're gonna go to new business now. Under new business, we do have 3 public hearings. The first public hearing is for rezone 2218 NAV Investments. Motley Road is at the north side of Motley Road between North Tycoon and South Vaughn. It's 100.24 acres, and the request is from RTHD to R3 single family. The applicant is NAV Investments. Is the applicant here to give us an overview what you're requesting?
So actually, we are downgrading this from the R3 to R1 zoning to have the single family homes to bring to the center. Because if you see around everywhere is the single family home, so that's what we thought. Appropriate for the city development if you have the single family homes.
You'll have to excuse us. That doesn't happen very often.
I was. Sure? Are you sure? Yeah.
All right, thank you. Eric, do you want to give us a staff overview?
Essentially, the applicant requests a lower density zoning. So formally, it was approved in April 19th as RTHD residential townhouse duplex. Now requesting to be zoned to R3SF, medium high density, single family residential. It on Motley Road. Either arterial. We would also have a major collector is proposed to be run between the property. So we're just seeing the same of what we saw back in the book. A lower density zone.
Are there any questions from or comments from any of the commissioners before we open up to the public? And at this time, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Yes, Jerry, I make a motion to open public. Second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? We are now open to a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak or have any comments or questions in regards to the rezone request from RTHD to R3 single family, we just ask that you come to the podium, state your name and address, and then any questions, comments that you might have. Second call for anyone who wishes to speak. And third and final call.
Yes, Jerry, I make a motion to close public hearing.
John will second.
Okay, motion is second to close the public hearing. Is anyone opposed? All right, let's go through the questions that we need to answer. And the first one is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan, if not, why? And I do think that it's consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. Does anybody disagree with that? Is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones? And I do think that it's compatible with the surrounding area and zones. Does anybody disagree? Would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and the surrounding areas? And again, I think the single family R3 does would be compatible. Does anybody disagree with that? Would the rezoning provide benefit to a single landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? And I do not believe that it offers a benefit to this single landowner. Does anybody disagree with that? And if the public is opposed, why? There were no comments or questions from any of the from anyone that's in the audience. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners before we entertain a motion? If not, then I would entertain a motion for the rezone 2218 NAB Investments. Again, it's at Motley Road, 100.24 acres from RTHD to R3 single family.
I'll motion to approve rezone 2218 NAV. PH duplex, so R3 single family.
Motion and a second. You'll do a roll call for me, please.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Brandon Swoboda,
Yes.
Gary Harris,
Yes.
Ben Lewis, Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Ron Sessoms,
Yes.
Tony Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Bayford.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck. Our next public hearing is rezone 22-25 OptiChain LLC. It's at 631 Bliss Street, 0.97 acres. RTHD to R3 multifamily. The owner is OptiChain. Looks like Kyle McGuire may be the representative. Is the applicant here to give us an overview?
Yeah, great to be here tonight. First off, I want to say thank you to those who have helped Diane, Frank before he retired. This is our first time developing an acre lot. We're excited to do it. But what we're looking to do is move from RTHD from the duplexes to R3MF to build four plexes. What this allows us to do is put a few more units on the land and use it a little bit better. We're excited about this because we believe it's going to bring affordable quality housing to the area. And also one of the struggles that has kind of plagued this property before is getting the sewer connected to it so that you could kind of use a little bit better. We've identified several paths through which we can now connect the sewer via existing easements. And we've also worked with the street superintendent to get T-cuts approved through Bliss Street and or Walker Street if needed to connect to the sewers. And do those during times that would be least disruptive. Things like that. We're excited to move forward.
Thank you. Donna, do you want to give us a staff overview?
Yes, so this is a pretty similar density to what's already there. It is in the parcel is surrounded by multiple residential subdivisions, as you can see in the exhibit in front of you. It is in kind of a gap in the Center Point subdivision, so it has development around it already. While R3MF does allow for up to 8 units per acre, we don't anticipate that it's actually going to get up that high because of the drainage that's going to need to go in. There's going to be access to get up to 8 units an acre. So because there is some 6s, there's some 5s, we think that it could be compatible with what could actually be constructed there. The parcel is designated low medium density on the adopted land use plan, which is described as consisting primarily of detached resident homes with areas of attached single family residential with an overall density of approximately 3 to 7 units an acre. As R3MF allows a maximum density of 8, it's not consistent with that density, but it's not very much above it. So it's not consistent, but it is close. The parcel is located on Bliss Street, which is a major collector. It is a pretty narrow lot. There's not a trail plan specifically here, but all of the collectors do have a 10-foot trail, which would need to be developed as part of any development plan or subdivision plan we do get. There is access to water, sewer, which he mentioned. It's not within any floodplain or floodway, and there's not any potential wetland that we can see. It does meet several items as indicated on the comprehensive plan, most notably infill and building next to. Let me know if you have any questions.
So the current RTHD would have allowed for how many? RMs.
We had figured before that they could get 6 units on here. If I remember right.
What's the code say though? Per acre, what's the density? Is it 8?
Just a moment.
I think briefly it's 7.
Or
And then this one.
this is townhouse.
And we'll in that
RTHD is about 8 units per acre.
So it's similar.
it's a different style. RTHD has each unit is on its own lot. So it's
Like single family.
Single family attached.
Go from it. 8,
Yes.
8 to 12.
Oh, for RTHD, it is 8 to 10, depending on if you include right of way, but
Right,
we
but
figure it's usually we do it without.
the proposed is 12.
No.
Right, most is 12.
Proposed is 12. 12 units per acre. Right?
R3MF is still 8 units per acre.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. The report.
I apologize, that is a typo. It should say 8.
say 12? Well, it says it allows either 3, 4 units, or 3.
Think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the main benefit of us going from RTHD to the R3 MF is that we could do triplexes or fourplexes versus just the duplexes, so it allows for some savings in the construction for us.
You do state that it, as the R3 NF allows a maximum density of 8 units per acre. It's not consistent with the adopted land use plan regarding density.
The other difference on the townhouse would be ownership, correct?
Yeah, townhouses would be owned by single, yeah, every person would own a lot. For RPMF, it would be more of a multiplex type of.
Look at the,
Alan's comments say.
where you look at square foot per acre. You break it down. That doesn't account for any access or.
Right, I know. I just want to go apples to apples.
Any other questions or comments from the planning commission before we open it up to the public? At this time, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for rezone 22-25.
On a motion to open public hearing for rezone 2225 Optic Chain LLC.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? We're
I'm sorry, I do need to know, we did get an email from Ms. Weeks, about 5:45. Stating she had some concerns about potential 2-story units, on this property. And there was another email, which I think is relating to this property, but there was no address or anything. So it was very unclear, but there was some concern about 3 or 4 unit developments.
That's gonna be read at the public hearing, right?
yes.
So did the email on the 2-story, they explain, was it a line of sight at the intersection of the street? Or what was their objection to a 2-story?
It's from Jessica Weeks. It says, good evening. I'm concerned with the development at 631 Wood Street in Centerton, Arkansas. I currently live at 561 Walker Street. My concern is the development on the property directly behind my home will be more than a 1-level development. If the development is 2 stories or more, my concern is my lack of privacy in my very own backyard. I would like to suggest that the development to a low medium density residential development. We can keep it consistent with the rest of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Yeah, I spoke to her before I hurried over here and asked her to send an email. And her concern was people being able to look into her backyard.
But as it is today, if it's a townhouse, I mean,
Yeah,
You could do it as is.
it's just a matter of screening, right? I mean,
Sorry, how?
Even if it was single family, same situation.
so we are open to the public. So if there's anyone that wishes to speak or have any questions or comments, please address us at the podium with your name, address, and any comments or concerns.
my name's Bill Edwards. I live at 261 Sun Meadow Drive, right across the street. And this one brings back some memories. I don't know if some of you remember this property. This came to the planning commission in 2019. Had a lot of public comment on it. Actually even had a resident over on Bliss Circle, the little informal traffic study. She was counting cars. You remember her?
But I remember.
My hero that.
Yes, I started looking at this, and actually the planning commission turned this down in 2019, but the city council decided to override it. The concern I have with this is, mainly this is this lot itself being, a narrow lot. The time you put a road in here, because you're going to put access, and it just seems like we're just really trying to cram a lot of stuff on this little piece of property. This is only 0.97 acres. And the time we get some right of way to match our master street plan, we're gonna probably lose about a 1/4 acre. And we put the street in and the easements for all the utilities that you know, getting the sewer lines, everything in there, you're really just cramming a lot on this and. You know, I believe that there is RTHD right down the street from it, so that's why the council determined it was compatible. But I think anything other than that, I don't think it would be compatible. Just like I said, just really trying to cram too much on this thing. And I mean, I respect what the man's trying to do and trying to get the maximum use out of the land, but this thing's very small. I don't even see where you get much green space or anything else in there. The time you put a road, I don't even know what fire truck's gonna be able to turn around in there. I know Paul will talk on that if development comes, but. You know, I don't see it, you know, that ladder truck's like over 45 foot long and it has to come in there. I don't see it. Anyway, I just wanted to give my feedback.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Amy Rochette, 3711 Bitter Ridge Street. I wanted to echo what the mayor said about the traffic right there. And then also, I don't know if you could reiterate, I couldn't quite hear you, but where you're going from townhome duplex, and you said, was it 8 to 10 units on an acre for a duplex, townhome duplex? Is that, was that, Diane? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, and then this would be a fourplex, is that correct?
Up to fourplexes would be allowed.
Up to what, sorry?
Yes, up to a fourplex would be allowed.
Okay. And so can you just kind of tell me the difference real quick? I know what a townhome is. What is a duplex? Like, what would be the difference?
So like a duplex has up to 2 units in a house size structure. This would have up to 4 units in a house size structure. That's what that means.
Okay, and then a townhome duplex, somebody could own it, whereas a multiplex, it would be more of a rental type thing.
Most likely, yes.
It wouldn't be single ownership for each individual unit, no.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm great. These guys did that. They put me in this chair and Halloween candy for you.
So just echoing what the mayor said, I think just looking at traffic, looking at flow and things like that, I would recommend against this. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm scared you, all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I'm sitting up.
I have a question. On the original application, there's 3 questions. I apologize. My name is Brian Darling. I'm at 633 Bliss Street. It's the property directly behind this one, the one in question. On the original application, there's 3 questions on page 2. Can someone tell me what the responses were on that application?
Might take just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. connect
My
to-
apologies for putting you on the spot.
I'm just not connected to the VPN.
The one, the purpose of the request.
Well, there's the purpose, the use, and then it asks about what the impact of surrounding neighbors.
Did it say the purpose is develop? And then, I mean, it doesn't have that.
I've got it connected now, so let me just give me a second and I will have it pulled up. Whatever loads anyway.
There we go.
Is it a safe assessment based on this zone? It's a small apartment. What we're really saying?
It's like a row home.
I'm sorry.
Like a row home. It's just one
Well, but
structure with 4
if I read the zone correctly, they can actually stack them, so you would have 2 on top of 2. Particularly this being a narrow lot, I would assume that might be in their mindset to try to accommodate some of the space issues. But in my mind and visualization, it just seems to me to be a small apartment complex. Is that fair?
Do we limit the height on the fourplex?
We had to.
Yes, same thing as residential.
Yeah.
35 feet or 2 stories.
So are you saying yes on 2 stories or no? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yes, it's limited to 2 stories, same as a house.
Same as a single family home or townhome or.
But so the question is, from a definition perspective, the 2-story would still be one individual unit that I would live in. There wouldn't be a different unit on top as there is on the bottom.
So it's.
There could be.
It could be steps.
Firewall, I don't think so.
Not the fire. You can do 4 units, but you can't do 4 units and put 4 units on top of it to make that.
The zoning we made, for town homes. So
2 and 2.
Yeah, that's what he's asking.
our zoning stops at 35 feet. The height, whatever, we have a minimum height. In the actual fire code, you could have a 6-story building, 4 units long, but that entire 4 stories is one residence. Once you start putting a second residence on top of another one, it becomes an apartment, which becomes into the building code. This allows you to stay in the residential code where it's less strenuous because of you're not stacking, if that makes sense.
So to your point, it is the row house that we talked about. Okay.
Yes.
I think that was your concern, right? Having 4 units and then put 4 more on top of it.
Yeah. On that original question?
Unfortunately, it looks like that didn't stand. If you give me a minute, I can go over and grab our hard copy.
Okay, well, there's really just the one question, and I think it relates, it's from the developer's perspective, what do the neighbors, what is the benefit or the drawback that they're gonna get? That's really the question I have. I felt the document would have been answering that question because that's exactly what it asked, but if he wishes to answer, I'm okay with that too.
Would you like to answer?
You come to the podium.
Alan McGuire, 311 Violet Street, Center. Arkansas. Yeah, so what we stated on that application was that it would increase property values, which has been shown through the development earlier. And that it would have minimal impact on the area because it's that townhome style of the 4 homes. The maximum you'd be looking at there is maybe 16 vehicles. And when you're looking at being a main collector amongst all these neighborhoods, that's going to be a 0 impact net across the traffic spectrum.
I would question the property increases. The simple fact of the matter is, whether it be row houses or apartments, that when you're purchasing your home, you're looking at the neighbors. Do they keep their yard tidy? Do they mow their yard? Do they have cars parked in it? Even when we're talking about the maximum, maybe 16 cars, does that mean that they all park, they have a spot? What happens to service trucks? What happens to grandma has Thanksgiving dinner and we have more cars? Do they park on the grass? Where's the parking in that scenario? One question I do have is that as the development is approved, if the new zone is approved, is there any point with which he would have to come back to the planning commission to get whatever the plan and development is approved?
Yeah, there's a whole development plan that happens after that. So it goes before staff, it goes before the engineer, fire department, and the road. Everybody would get a chance. There's comments. They have to, their plan has to fit within whatever their limitations are for that piece of property. So yes, there are at least one meeting, maybe more if we don't come to an agreement on the first one. So yes.
Okay, so traditionally in these type of developments, where would like trash service be? I assume there's a dumpster. Does that mean it's close to the house, or does some neighbor get the benefit?
We don't know any of that stuff yet, you know.
So it's becoming late.
It does come later, yes.
To clarify, because this is adjacent to R3 single family, or they would have to meet our residential compatibility standards. So for example, the question about trash, they could not put trash right next to you all.
Okay. So we talk a lot about the comprehensive plan. Can we pull one of those up? at least I looked at the one that was online. There's a couple of references I think are very pertinent. So I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. I'll even tell you where the page.
In this section here,
No, there's a, no, this is actually, because I actually went out to look at the conference.
See the map.
The actual maps, yeah, that's what I was looking for.
that, you're talking about the plan.
The visual help, but I'll be happy to describe.
Gotta get to it.
She's working on getting to it.
Okay, my apologies for not pre-warning.
Keeping them on their toes.
Just for reference, though, we're just talking about the use of the land. We can't consider what they plan to design or plan to put or.
And that's what I think that the last 2 points, I think will illustrate quite clearly. So on page 25. And the map is over to the right.
Trees. 21.
This one,
Yes, if you can zoom in on the close to the property would be fabulous. I think if you look at it, look at the Bliss Street where ST is. You're doing a fabulous job. Okay, so here's the big point. So that this particular zone. Right now, the planned land use is low to medium density all around this property, including this property. This proposal is not low to medium, it's medium to high. So it's inconsistent with the plan as we move forward. The second piece of it, I apologize, if you could just go down one more page. The 26. And I'm almost certain that it's in zone 3. All right,
You're correct.
can you read or put up what's in zone 3? So I'll read it aloud just to kind of give it context. It says the area, and this is the area should include low to medium density residential infill to accommodate both attached and detached housing units. And this is the key part, in my opinion. So this will help maintain the desired character of the existing single-family neighborhood while providing slightly higher density. In my opinion, that kind of really says it all, that a row house is inconsistent with both the land use and the current planned zoning for this particular property. I would recommend that the planning commission vote no for the change. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in regards to this rezone?
Hi, my name is Patty Franklin, 601 Walker Street. My question in regards to this, number one, I have to reiterate what you said in regards to that, because all the homes around there are certain, kind of like what you said. And in the event that there is like the fire department coming through or anything like that, and cars are parked out like they shouldn't be, these poor firemen are kind of going like this. And if it is like a higher than a single family home, if anything catches fire or goes over the fence, it's not gonna be fun for the neighbors that get affected. So I'm gonna say it in a nutshell. I'm opposed. Thank you, by the way.
Anyone else wish to speak?
You got one question. Sorry. Just hit me on the second. The last time that I had to do this, there was some clarity around if this particular item is rejected. When is the next opportunity for them to come back before the commission to get it rezoned again?
They can go before the city council and appeal, or if we chose to not approve, they can appeal to the city council to override our approval.
Okay, but let's say for whatever reason, the city council said, or we don't approve appeal or whatever, that they stick with no. Then when can they come back before the planning commission?
They'd have to meet. Well, first, it'd have to be substantially different for us to hear it again if we deny it. But two, they'd have to meet the notification requirements for this. So I don't know that they could come back to the next planning commission meeting and still meet the notification requirements. So it'd probably at least be the one after that or the one following.
There's no restriction, because here, this is,
I thought it was 12 months unless it was significant.
It could come back once a year, but essentially.
The same thing.
Said it has to be different.
Right. Unless it's significantly different.
thank you, that's what I need.
Wire, 311 Violet Street. Just wanted to make the point here that when we look at the zoning and clarify, the only difference we're really looking at is how many units will be placed together in a single building structure. All the things about two-story traffic, all of those things remain exactly the same with the current zoning that are already there. And so we're really looking at is, can we build more than two houses together in one? And again, I think with the way the land is narrow, the way the land is used, and when we're looking at income or property tax, things like that, there's benefit to the city, is to allow us to move to R3 MF. Because it increases taxes, it will continue to increase property values as shown in past historical data from the city. And so I just want to clarify that regardless of whether the zoning stays today or it changes, two stories still there, all those things are still the same. We're just looking to be able to use that land a little bit more effectively and build threeplexes or fourplexes, which in the end will still be the same amount of units we put on with a duplex in many cases. So it's a very small change, but again, it's very effective for us because of building costs and being able to build that in a way that'll be beneficial for us.
Last call for anyone from the public that wishes to speak. This time I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
John, I motion to close the public hearing for rezone 2225.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or discussion amongst the commissioners before we go through what we need to consider?
Like Bill pointed out, originally, we even voted no to the duplex. You know, more likely because it doesn't fit, and then it got people at council and approved. So this is one step above that. In density.
Okay.
I do also have concerns over the street and that duplex. Going from duplex to more for the three or fourplex. I mean, you're doubling the amount of potential cars, potential traffic on a very narrow access point.
Anything else from staff? Anything we need to clarify before we go through our considerations?
Just that the allowable density is not really changing with this request.
Okay.
It's still about 8 units an acre.
Can it be up to 12 though? Understand not looking at the slide.
Our R3 multifamily has a maximum allowable density of 8 units an acre. You cannot go up.
It's just a different type.
Different style of structure, but
Yes.
same size structure.
So if he comes back and does it,
Same case.
As the current zone, he can still do it, it's just a different style.
Correct.
Getting the same density that he's asking for right now. Right?
Yes. Same number of units, different style of building.
With the main difference being ownership. All right. First question, is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan? If not, why? And I'm still of the belief, probably like I was in 2019, whenever we saw it the first time, that it doesn't necessarily is not consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan.
I agree with that.
Does anybody disagree with that or have any comments? Is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones?
That's where I disagree, because I don't think there's any R3 multifamily in the area.
And I think you have to get pretty far down the street.
Yeah, so I would say that's not consistent.
R3 multifamily is a relatively new zone, so there's not much of it.
Any other multifamily?
There is multifamily here at the corner. This is
That's the apartments, right?
apartments. There's
That's not close.
RTHD across, which are townhomes. And all of the downtown area, wherever it has gone to, is also R3 multifamily. So it'll be here.
You're looking
And
at,
there's some here also.
you're looking at 50 acres.
My biggest thing up on the compatibility in my mind around this one is the ownership versus non-ownership with all of the single family that's around it is where my hang up is. But certainly I throw that out for any discussion or comments amongst any of the commissioners. Does anybody agree that it is compatible? Okay. Would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and the surrounding areas? And again, I go back to being compatible, similar to the question before. And again, my hang up here is still more around the ownership versus not, especially with the single family. But that's me.
The use, I mean, regardless of ownership would still be the same. I mean, is that something they can look at as ownership?
Well, probably not, but maybe, well, yeah, I don't think so, but I get where you're going with it.
If we take that out, then I guess it could be considered compatible. I mean, if we wanted to, if we put the use in there.
Will you repeat the?
You go to the questions.
Would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and the surrounding areas?
There's no other, if, all else aside, there's no other homes with that style in this area. There's no other.
No, I don't think we can all ownership, but I think you can answer. I think it's all single family units. It's not the same use. The family versus.
Well, there is also duplex to the north. Just to the northwest of this property. And also some additional duplex in this area.
It's duplex currently. We're asking for multi-family.
Yeah, he's asking for it to step up. And those have larger lot sizes. Acreage to develop on too. We're still talking about less than an acre. That's my hang up.
Right, right.
Because you take in the right of way widths and then the road widths, just a local road. I mean, yeah, that's.
Okay. Next question, would the rezoning provide a benefit to a single landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? only because it was mentioned that it does allow for some efficiencies by the applicant that would benefit them from a dollar perspective when it comes to building. I'm leaning towards, this particular example is where it would actually benefit this particular landowner, but again, just a comment from the applicant and my take on that, but certainly open to any discussion or any other comments in regards to that.
Open to the forum or just amongst yourselves?
It's amongst ourselves right now. The next one, if the public is opposed, why? And are the objections based upon factual information relating directly to this request or opinion based? Does any factual information presented apply to this rezoning situation? The email that referenced two-story, of course, today, I guess they could have two-story. The reference from Bill and Amy, of course, road and traffic, no studies this time, but potential, just a comment, which we would have seen before. I'm sorry, would you like to leave or would you like us to finish? Thank you. Brian asked about the two stories, which of course is similar. There was a couple references to property value. That's always a tough one. Nothing was said here tonight that said it would be different or whether it would increase or decrease. It's simply just a statement that was made in regards to property value. Kind of clarify I'll call it the development part of it that does come before us and how we try to protect the homes that are, or anything that's around, any surroundings that are around it. Patty, in regards to the two-story, so nothing that we don't hear in a lot of these particular rezones. This one, again, no hard facts that I saw tonight that were referencing, other than the fact, and I do appreciate you reading the comprehensive plan. There's a little bit of debate between whether it's 7 units, 8 units, or things like that. But other than that, not really anything else from a factual perspective. Any comments in regards to that?
Can I add some clarification here?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Looking at the difference in density between the R3D and the R3 multifamily. You're looking at a 4,000 square foot area per unit on the R3D. On the multifamily, you're looking at, for the 4-unit multifamily, you're looking at a 3,000 square foot per unit. For 4. So there is additional density with the multifamily. Both have an 80-foot wide lot requirement. But when you break it down per unit, that's less land per unit.
Thank you, Joey. Anything else from any of the commissioners or staff before we consider the rezone request? If there are no additional comments or questions, then I would entertain a motion for rezone 22-25, Opti Chain at 631 Bliss Street. Again, it's 0.97 acres, request from RTHD to R3 multifamily.
Done on motion to approve rezone 22-25 Opti Chain LLC.
Joey, a second.
Motion and a second to rezone 22-25 from RTHD to R3 multifamily. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Joey Engel,
No.
Brandon Swoboda,
No.
Barry Harris,
No.
Ben Lewis,
No.
Kevin Murphy,
No.
John Sessoms,
No.
Tony Davis,
No.
Jeff Safar.
No as well.
Your denials.
Mine is the compatibility and the potential for additional density.
You need it for everybody?
Does anyone else have anything different? So we need, if it's.
Need to get, does that go to city, does that go to council?
If he chooses, I mean, it's up to him.
No.
We have to provide a letter stating specific reasons for denial.
Those are the two main, unless.
I mean, we can go back to the discussion that we had. I mean, just before the vote, there's a lot of items in there as well. I mean, I think it's in there.
All right, next on the agenda this evening is a public hearing as well for rezone 2226, the Coberly rezone at 5600 Brookside Road. It is 6.41 acres, A1 to R1 and RE. The owner is Leslie. I don't see Leslie here tonight. Are we just going to do this in?
We're supposed to have Robert Pastor, but he has a meeting with the Rogers.
Okay.
And Leslie has since sold the property and the new owners could not make it. So Ryan Long and Sarah.
We can just cover this through staff then.
Yes.
Diane, you want to give us an overview?
Yes, you did see a track split for this property. A couple weeks ago, I believe it was, and because of the track split for her selling off the main house and then having the other smaller homes, to I think remain in her ownership. It does require a rezone because it becomes smaller than the 5 acres required by agriculture. So they are requesting to rezone from the A1 to RE for the larger lot, the 2.77 acres, and R1, which is the 1.38 acres. Again, this is just basically a requirement because they did do a track split and created a smaller lot allowable. The properties around it, well, I took my map away when I needed it. Kind of a mixture over here in this area. You just heard on the Daisy Road duplexes, those are directly to the west of this property, and of course, here is the solid waste. And then we have R3 duplex over here also, and a little bit of neighborhood commercial. And of course, this is R3 single family on the south side of Brookside, and then agriculture around it. It is medium high density in the comprehensive plan. So it's not necessarily consistent, but it is, I mean, it is a lower density. So, but it's not necessarily consistent, but I mean, it's definitely compatible with both the current zoning and also the comprehensive plan. So, that's about it on this one. Utilities, of course, they do already have access. I'm not sure. They're on.
Don't have sewer.
Huh?
They don't have any
They
sewer.
don't have sewer, okay. So but they could access it in the future if they could choose. There are no floodplains or floodways indicated, but the southeast corner here does have a nice little pond, and there is definitely water that sits on that lot where those smaller homes are located.
Okay.
So that's what we have for staff.
All right, we'll go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Mr. Tony, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for rezone 22-26.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? We're now open to the public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak or have any questions or comments in regards to rezone 2226. The Coverly rezone again is at 5600 Brookside Road. Second call for anyone who wishes to speak.
No, thank you.
Third and final call.
This is Joe. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? And again, I think this is a formality. We did approve the track split. I think there was some, gosh, she was here 2 or 3 meetings ago. There were some notification things and some other things. So that's the reason that she's she's honoring what she said she would do by bringing this back for the rezone. Not that we don't need to consider everything, but just so that everybody knows.
And we do have a proxy from the new owner, so they are well aware that this is occurring and are fine with this, so.
Okay. So first thing is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan, if not why? Technically, no, but it is a less dense. So I think that in that case, that this particular one is okay, but certainly open to any of the commissioners' questions or comments in regards to that. Is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones? It's still going to be single family homes, so I do think that it would be compatible. Does anybody disagree with that?
I didn't put your questions up there, my apology.
Would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location, the surrounding areas? And again, I do think that it would be, the uses would be compatible from a single family residential. Does everybody disagree with that? Gonna kill off all the commissioners before it's over with there.
I think y'all need to lay out that Halloween candy.
Increase taxes and get some.
Would the rezoning provide a benefit to one landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? And I do not think that this provides a benefit to just the one landowner. Wouldn't consider. Does anybody disagree with that? And if the public is opposed, why? There were no opposition from the public. Any additional questions or comments from any of the commissioners before we consider the rezone? Then at this time, I would entertain a motion for rezone 2226 Coverly rezone at 5600 Brookside Road. Again, the request is 6.41 acres, A1 to R1 and RE.
This Jerry, I make a motion to approve our rezone 22/26 totally rezone. 5600 Brookside Road.
Second. Motion and a second. If you'll do a roll call for me, please.
Bernie Davis.
Yes.
Ron Sessoms,
Yes.
Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Brandon Swoboda,
Yes.
Gary Harris,
Yes.
Shane Lewis.
Yes.
Jeff Safar.
Yes. Thank you. All right, next under other business is the amendments to uses for flex space and mobile vendors to Title 14 zoning. I'll review the final changes on 11/15 and set the public hearing, which is 12/6. I'm just reading what it says. Is that wrong?
No, it is next meeting. So, yes, that is,
But we had to set that it would be the next meeting.
yes.
Oh, we're setting the public hearing after the next meeting. Or we're setting it for
Or the next
12/6.
Public hearing is set for 12/6.
12/6, okay, so we'll be discussing it further on 11/15.
Any final changes, I guess.
Are there any adjustments planned for what we have in here?
I think the public hearing is 11/15. What we have it set for.
I didn't see that on the,
Yeah, you. How many days?
Yes,
Oh, you
it was
did?
the public notice.
The public hearing.
Okay.
Here.
Did we set that last meeting?
Setting the
Or did-
meeting.
Said it. I thought we said last meeting, I had to look at the notes. that we- Said.
Discuss it tonight.
Yeah, isn't it this-
Can we set it this meeting for next meeting?
With what y'all had.
You noticed.
For public hearing on the 15th.
So the public hearing is next week.
Public hearing is next time. She was just gonna go over what the final changes.
Yeah,
Is that what you're on?
yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what we're showing here.
It's not the public hearing.
Yeah, no, today is not the public hearing.
we're just reading what it says
Have
here.
it set up.
So when is the public hearing?
Next,
15th.
yeah, the 15th.
What's on 12/6?
That is just a typo.
That was that was the original for.
I think what happened is it got copied from the Title IX and it didn't get changed for that.
That's what I would.
All right, so the public hearing is November 15th.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
In the agenda.
Final change. Public hearing set for 11. That was just copied.
Do you want to cover the changes with us or want
Yes.
to try to keep us moving along?
Okay. So after the last meeting, we added some uses that were not previously included, like the e-commerce and trade uses. But to summarize real quick, this is not a new zoning district. This is just a use in the schedule of uses. There was, the biggest change is a section at the end that goes through how this would go about being approved. So the idea is that a concept plan, look at it, see if it's meeting the requirements, if there is some need for a waiver, staff could look at it. If there is a hardship, we could look at granting one if there was something significant that would warrant that. Or if there was something that still meets the intent of these conditions to mitigate potential nuisances and still allow flexibility of multiple uses within a structure. So with specifying meeting the intent, there's also a section added at the beginning to explain what the intent is. And that is to mitigate nuisances to adjacent property and still allow some flexibility. Unless it meets those two requirements, there would not be a waiver. There's also a note to, we can potentially allow some additional requirements, either us or you. And it would give the final. So if you get a flex space use and you say, well, we don't think you've done enough, we think you need additional screening, you need noise mitigation, you can do that. We also wanted to specify that there's an appeal process. So if someone disagrees with the vision of staff, they can go to you and say, we don't like this. We want to say it's too strict. So wanted to have that escape valve, something that a developer could go in and say, we don't like what staff is doing. So that's the biggest section, biggest new change. Other than that, it was largely minor changes. We did take out the A1 and further recommendation.
Help me remember why we A1
There was some discussion about whether or not that this would be appropriate for those areas.
Out of all the residential.
Huh?
Out of all the residential, it'll be just in commercial space. And industrial.
Right, so the flex space is more of like commercial, retail, maybe some manufacturing. It's allowing the mixing of those uses within the same building. So there was that discussion about maybe that's not appropriate in the agriculture or the RE. So we took that out to maybe consider later if it ends up well.
Kind of compatibility.
The other item that will be up for consideration is taking food only out of the mobile vendor and allowing it to be any mobile vendor. So if somebody wants to come in with a mobile dog or something like that, that use will allow it. As right now, it is strictly mobile vendors.
That's something completely different, right? That has nothing to do with the flex space.
That is a completely separate use. Those are the big changes from the last meeting.
So how are these spaces going to be designated if it's not a zoning district? If, I mean, really anything could be a flex use or flexible space? How do I, let's say I'm a business owner and I have a brewery and I want to go in a small flex space. How do I know what's a flex space, what isn't a flex space? Is that designated with the approval of the large scale? Or, I mean, I think there should be some sort of verbiage in there to.
We've gotten a couple of requests for flex space this past year, and those really come in at the front because a flex space is really designed to be flexible. So it's really hard to retrofit a space to be flexible if there's a lot of walls that are built in, because you really need, as we've seen it, as we've had it explained to us by a lot of like the couple people we've had come in who are wanting to do flex spaces. There's tends to be large open spaces, potentially walls that can come up and down as needed, things like that. And that's something that is done at the beginning. So if it's a single use space, if it's only a microbrewery, for example, that's not a flex space.
I understand. I'm saying, what if let me rephrase the question. If I'm a homeowner buying a house. How do I know that I'm not buying a house next to a flex space?
It's already gonna be in commercial and industrial areas.
Right, but maybe I'm okay living next to a restaurant, but I don't want to live next to a potential industrial site that's flexible.
The big difference with flex spaces is I build a 9,000 square foot building. So I'm under the 10,000 for fire code. And you can go and break it apart however you want. So you want 4,000, Devin wants 4,000, and Ben wants.
Build a suit. I get the concept.
The whole thing is that
The public know what's a flex space and what's not.
it's the construction when you go there, when you see it. Now, before it's constructed, you just know it's commercial property.
I feel like there should be some designation of flex, what's considered a flex space or not, right? I mean, that seems pretty. Well, and it can be in any of those zoning districts, and I don't know the answer to this, but how do if, let's say we all go on a plane together and the plane goes down, how does the people that come in know what's a flex space and what's not? Because there's gonna be some things that are allowed in those spaces that wouldn't be allowed in normal commercial space.
I don't want a plane crash, but what if that changes, like his point, I'm okay moving into a restaurant, but in 10 years from now, that restaurant goes away and now it's an industrial space because it's designated flex. I didn't know that was. Bought my house.
The zoning stays the same as C2 for I1. The zoning doesn't change. It's the requirements of a flex space, just the same as.
No, it's just a use.
If you have alcohol sales, you have certain requirements that you have to be in different zones. And then, so she's laying out the detailed requirements of what they would need to do in order to have, it's additional requirements on this use.
So it's a use, it's additional uses within the already zone.
Right.
So it has to be C2 or I1 to begin.
I would have to.
I was struggling with that as well.
My concern
Okay, yeah.
most would be C3 and make that more of a condition, but that would be the biggest concern, but that's a big one.
The biggest thing with the uses allowed within this is their minimal impact to surrounding property. So any sort of industrial use that would be allowed would be something like a craft brewer or a woodworking shop or things like that that don't have an impact outside of the building.
And a lot of these are currently, just looking at the defined uses, are currently things that are conditional.
We would
And
just allow them.
several different, C2, C1, C3 might already be conditional, but this way, if they wanted to put several of these together in a flex space, you would need a conditional use for, Joe Bob wants a brewery. But, Tom over here wants to have some sort of small manufacturing type thing, and then Sue wants to have office space.
I want to start my day as a plumber there before sending all the crews out. It's where I park my vans in the garage. Say, you guys are going here, here, and here. That meeting spot before you go.
And
It's gonna look just like a build to suit strip center.
Exactly.
What it is, so it sounds like.
It allows.
And I know we're not the first city to try this. I mean, it's already being utilized elsewhere in other cities, and it seems to be successful from what people I've talked to. It's not like we're the guinea pigs on this.
and we do have the compatibility of.
Correct.
In this, so that depending on what zoning is adjacent to it, that will make the buffer requirements.
Anything that was next to residential would need to meet the residential compatibility standards that we already have. These are additional requirements, so that way you all would not be having to look at a conditional use requirement.
So, right, so what's the benefit that the developer gets is that he doesn't or she doesn't have to do multiple conditional uses?
Yes, when we've seen this before and we were having to try to figure out a conditional use for every potential suite that could come in, it was very complicated, very complicated. It adds some consistency to the process. So that way developers can come in and see, if I want to do this, if I meet these requirements, I can do this.
So I have a question. So the defined uses on this sheet, these already existed, or this is what we added to this, we created this?
No, it's not in.
Most of these already exist in our uses, some of them like technology companies.
And the reason for my question is, some of these, I guess, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, don't seem to be compatible with one another. And if we give it a general, here's the flex space, and then here are all the things that you can do that without coming in to apply for a conditional use. Some of these are different. Like, I mean, where I work right now, there's a brewery next door, and the smell is pretty significant. And the discharge of their stuff into the sewer system's pretty significant. If I have a trades service that, or some kind of, I thought I saw something earlier, even a special manufacturing or anything of that nature. I mean, how does that affect our sewer in that place, grease traps, things of that nature? If we're just giving one general, here you go, now you don't have to apply for anything else, and you can put anything that fits in here.
So
Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm asking that correctly.
yes, the way, we've had a couple of flex space potential users come and talk to us. And the way it's been explained is that each flex space tends to be different. So there might be a flex space that comes in and they focus in on, say, medical facilities.
Right.
And so they might have a couple of labs in there, and there's a research facility and a couple of offices, and that might be one flex space. While another flex space might be more focused in on e-commerce and warehousing, while another one might be technology companies and maybe some contractors who focus in more on that end. But with each of these, all this does is look at a use. This does not take away the requirement for a development, a large-scale development application, where we'll look at, can this support sewer? Can this support fire? And we'll look at a concept plan when we look at this to see, are they meeting the requirements? We can tell them, okay, we don't think this is suitable in this area. These are these other requirements you have to meet. And then when we get to the large scale development, we can look at it more intensely to say, okay, this is what you have to do to meet fire code, to meet building code, things like that.
So nothing really changes there. This just bypasses them having to come to us to get a conditional use, because they can already do it conditionally in the existing zones, right? They're just bypassing that step of coming to get a conditional use and just saying it's permitted. Building our scale.
It's a convoluted, messy process. No, this simplifies that.
Without having to get 4 different conditional uses for the same building.
So I got 2 questions on this. One, what is the method for reevaluation when the tenant changes? And then 2, if I have to do all of these other requirements, if I'm the developer, it's gonna be a lot cheaper for me just to do a build to suit and get a conditional use on each one. What's the, yeah, why are they incentivized to do this?
You can get conditional use for this, and then they can market that building that they can do. Yes, we can do that. We can build that. So they can market, yes, market that building.
Owner can get it afterwards.
And I don't have I mean,
Otherwise, each one has to come in.
yeah,
Conditional use.
I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make sure we thought through
I know.
everything, and I'm still hung up on how is something gonna be identified as a flex space, and how do I know, looking at it, that it's a flex space, whether it's on the GIS, the zoning map, or whatever?
I would like for that minimal impact to to adjoining property owners. Bold.
We have to have some mechanism to say this doesn't
There.
fit, and it seems like that's the only way.
This-
But the overall big picture, Joey, is still gonna be either
We're
commercial
gonna be C1,
or
C2.
industrial, right? So the overall big picture, I mean, this could end up being less.
Good, could be offices, yeah.
So that's where I think there's a potential benefit. I mean, so I don't know how you designate it. I mean, I'm with you, but I think today they could put something, more intensive.
Is it a suffix on the zoning that just says F for flex space, or just some way to show that it's a flex area?
We can look at that and try to figure out some way of doing that with the map.
Cause again, that's
C1F, C2, whatever.
marketability.
It still stay, but I don't know, you're getting.
That would go beyond the conditional use, that would be a whole new zone.
Well,
Yeah. Have to change the whole zoning code.
My daughter and I have just doing just like a PUD as an overlay. Kind of that type. I'm gonna ask Eric started. On our map so that we can. Do like some type of a hatch or something, so we can see which.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, even
That we. do.
cross hatching, yeah.
I mean, I can,
Flex space that we can do another layer for flex.
I'm for the flex space, but I'm kind of like, I see Joey's point, because I wouldn't think that a residential would be an appropriate flex space in a residential zone.
That's why we took it out.
Took it out.
Shown.
So,
residential.
Okay, so yeah, as long as we got those protections.
Just.
Where is it gonna say it in our code? I guess.
I'm gonna actually,
In the back, it is not allowed at all.
Okay.
Was an RE, and we said last time, take it out of RE.
Flex space.
they're gonna speed up the development.
Just have to actually.
Yes, right. So that's-
Yeah, let's do it.
Little big blank shell.
If they know when they come and talk, to us, they always ask how they will have to calculate the parking. Do you have anything out that keeps, how they will calculate it?
Yes, so we want them to share parking. And we'll look at the parking compared to single invasive developments. And we can talk about that.
You said just
Share that.
for the final approval, how they would have to calculate it.
We'll figure that out with the concept, and commission is okay with, as it's written, we can figure out with the staff.
What about fire? Are there any ramifications on this, different requirements for different tenants and stuff like that? Right. So each one, are they gonna be considered suites essentially, and each one would have a separate building permit?
So I don't know. Part of my concern is if you have one flex space and they put in a microbrewery and it goes away, and then they come in and put in an e-commerce, that's a totally different occupancy and the roads are completely different. So it will make it a little difficult on us to keep track of, and once it's built. It's built.
Well, even if they downsize from 5,000 to 2,500 and they build a new wall, that's gonna be fire rated. The sprinklers are gonna have to come down, reformat. I mean, there's a lot of cost in that.
Anytime there's any changes to the buildings that we have now and they have to take out walls or retrofitted for another business, those do go through the building.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's still gonna be very, but you're marketing, back to your point, you're marketing that way though. So whoever builds that shell is gonna be in that market to thinking, okay, I have to be prepared to bang, 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 instead of Jordan, like that Beckendale. It's pretty much always been the same slots. It's changed a few times, but think because you're tearing up storefront, you're changing, all the facade. So if you're changing facade out, then we gotta watch how it's built to be changed, or you're got a lot more construction, I'm just saying, it is a little different.
Each occupancy has different, obviously, square footage. Through certain codes, like obviously a microbrewery would have more intense fire protection than a business office. Kind of in my back of my mind, kind of a concern I have is if you have a office or a e-commerce or something like that, and it goes away, and now they want to put in a microbrewery. Does it have, what is it gonna take to, is it gonna be able to, the upgrades for the sewer system, the water system like you were talking about? That's only my concern, and that should be able to be worked out, but it's easier to get caught, I think. If we have to look at each one as a conditional use. Because then we look at each one individually, whereas. I mean, I see both sides.
What do you do now for different infill? Just building permits for everyone? So it would likely probably be exactly the same, right?
But if it's designated as a, let's take Centerton Retail. The one up on the hill by Stone Lake. We've approved. Conditionally on the site and everything else being done. We've actually reviewed 3 different sets of plans. One's a restaurant, one's a nail salon, and one's a physical therapy.
We don't see those. Planning doesn't see those.
Right.
For the building part, it does.
I mean, like I said, it will.
The flex spot.
It's really on them because of the building code that they're gonna have to meet based on the use. I don't see it being any different than the current system, but because of the wide range of uses, there could be some serious cost upgrades to the building, to the infrastructure.
They need to know that ahead of time.
Sure. I think that might be part of the game of this flexible space is, hopefully they're expecting that.
I think that's what I'm saying. I can see both sides and I think it'll work. There's just some growing pains and things that will have.
So that spot up there on the hill as he's talking was marketed as a flex space. We never see that again either. If they've said, if that is flex space and there was any.
My understanding, you guys, planning would never even see.
Okay, because I didn't realize what said it might come back or if there
It
was a
says
problem.
it's, what?
Is that just from the very front of it?
Appeals if the staff doesn't agree.
Right.
Making sure that if it was marketed that way, we're still done with it.
I would think there still has to be that opportunity as tenants change, if there's some sort of disagreement about how it fits with everything around it, that it would be able to come back to the planning commission for a building tenant.
So how does that work? If a new tenant comes in, is it the owner that appeals to the staff?
Oh, they apply for business permits and submit plans.
Okay.
This is where I get into where. Let me back up. I don't understand the zoning side of it. My side of it, I think it'll work. And I don't think there'll be a whole lot of issue. I don't understand the zoning side of it. Let me say that. This sounds like it's gonna make it easier for them. It's probably not gonna really change much for me.
So let's say I have a highway commercial zoning with a flex space. Are all of these allowed in there? Or is it only what the underlying zoning allows for? Like, have we thought about all of these situations that we might run into?
So the flex space specifically allows these things. It doesn't change the underlying zoning. What it does is it says, if you want to do this use, these are the requirements you must meet.
Now, how does it work? You mentioned before, a build to suit. Do you know how like the zoning works for that? Because it could be.
Yeah, they can only have what's allowable in the zone.
Within.
Right, which these are permitted in this zone, but many of them require. conditional use.
And this takes out that.
Maybe we should specify that no use that is not allowed in the underlying zoning will be allowed with the flex space. It has to be conditional.
We're the flex zone, right? I mean, you're taking away.
No, I get it, Tony, but we don't say that in here.
We bought a piece in Bentonville, Walmart did, and we bought the tenants with it that was in there. And it's not there now, it's gonna be something else, but there was, I think there's 10 buildings on it, and there was an industrial part of it. But there was some people coming, want to put a restaurant in it, and that they had to go, Walmart would have built it out for them. But city said no, so it went back to somebody at that, so that's what I'm saying, they didn't even get a conditional, they got a big no, so we didn't even worry about it, so that's what I'm saying, there was vendors in there, there was Fellers was in there, there was all, I mean, it was just crazy what different pieces was in there, and it was fine until somebody wanted to put a restaurant in there. And they went back to the city, they were like, no. So
That uses that would be allowed in industrial would be allowed in C1.
Right. Correct.
What did you just say?
Uses that may be allowed in industrial will not be allowed in C1. Or
Is a distillery allowed in C1?
it has.
Let me look.
Conditional.
well, here's what killed that one was the
That's a downtown.
park. That's what shot it down from retail.
What is conditional? It's allowed in C2. And industrial.
I just don't want to create this and then allow uses that don't really mix with the surrounding zonings, you know?
So microbreweries are conditional in all commercial zoning districts.
Permitted in industrial.
I said distillery. That would be more industrial to me,
That's the industrial.
right? But is it,
That one for distillery. No, we have microbrewery restaurant.
we should probably look at our list of what we stay on here. Perhaps the uses.
Alcohol manufacturing.
Alcohol manufacturing and distribution. The C2 is conditional and permitted in industrial.
It just seems to me that one piece right there just doesn't make sense in the other defined uses that are here, because most of these seem to me to be office related, warehouse storage related, and things of that nature. And if we're permitting that next to whatever we were talking about earlier,
So would you like to take out the microbrewery aspect?
for me, I don't see how it fits. That also because I have I just have personal experience working next to that, and it is in I am in an industrial
And it would still
area.
be permitted in industrial.
Do I now?
Right?
Yeah.
Permitted in industrial
In industrial.
and currently it is conditional and C2 only. So not allowed in C1 or 3.
But I guess in that case, it wouldn't be in the same space or building, right?
So if they came in for industrial, they came in, it's an industrial zone,
No problem.
and they wanted to have a small manufacturing, in the microbrewery and the special manufacturing, just those two things. They could do that in industrial, but if it was in C2, they would need to come and get conditional use.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's only those things that,
That are allowed in the zone.
Zoning is
There you
like-
go. They do flex space in C2.
but you can't allow, you might be able to allow some of those, but you couldn't allow ones that were strictly prohibited in that zone.
So we'll make it more clear that it's used within the underlying district.
There you go.
Yeah, I like Joey's.
So yeah, that's, I think that solves it.
Then what's the benefit?
Use 2.
Because you're still,
You don't each have to come in for conditional use.
it's just the conditional use.
Is that right? Or are we messing it up?
I think also though, it will be for developers. if you do what you're doing. If we're doing what you're about, what we're doing, what we're recommending. I mean, I like it. I just think we need to specify.
Yeah, and we can also, if we find we have an issue with something or something's not quite working the way we want to, we can always come back and tweak this.
Eric is chomping at the.
I know, that's what I was pointing.
Eric's hand up like 5 times now.
I'm trying to throw a wrench into things, but why are we trying to do something that's form-based into the schedule of uses? Or would you consider a flex space to be a use?
This isn't form-based, this isn't putting a form on it, this is doing the conditional use work already. So it's saying that if you meet these uses, you have the use.
Okay. So is it like,
Kind of like our home occupations. It keeps certain requirements. Then it can be administratively approved, that conditional use.
So,
But if they don't, then it goes to the need.
so is it gonna take like a new like procedure to approve these?
Yeah.
But with like, or like.
It will be, it will be conditional, basically be a conditional.
Be a conditional use.
Flat space.
It's essentially a hub, but for one space. We'll make that change to define uses. Are there any other items that you want us to modify during next week?
Next week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry.
I just want to know if we're missing the mark by. I'd like to know the intent of this across different cities, how they use it, and is it based on the underlying zoning? Like, because now in my mind, the only thing we're doing is getting around the conditional use process. And I'm still gonna go through that as a developer because it imposes so many less, rules on me. And it would be cheaper to do. It might be more of a headache long-term, but.
When we've been talking to developers, the biggest thing that most of them want is consistency and knowing for sure that they'll be able to do what they want. So whenever there's a conditional use permit, there's always the chance that they're gonna get denied. So if they get this, then if they meet the requirements, they'll be able to do flex space.
But if it matches the underlying zoning, then there's no conditional use required.
For these uses where there's conditional use,
Then it would allow. So
Then-
that's what it.
it takes out that uncertainty.
So this goes back to
Permit.
each individual zoning district. Essentially, this would allow all of the conditional uses within that zoning district. All right.
With,
Those listed, defined.
like.
That's what we need to define in this document, I think.
That's-
It does.
that was the intent with the defined uses, like trades and services, like the contractors. Those are conditional in several of the commercial, so that would be allowed.
I think for consistency, if we spell out under the intent. What, like what this is actually doing, when you look at the zoning. So anybody off the street that reads it understands what this is, what benefits it has for them. I think that's what we're missing in there.
We can work on that.
It's not allowing uses that are not permitted. Underlining.
Any other discussion or comments before we move on to the next one? Because this will be up before the meeting next time. All right, we'll move on to the next discussion. The next discussion is on Title 9, Streets and Sidewalks, Title 16, Drainage and Flood, Stormwater Management and Drainage Manual Discussion. Alan, what do you got?
A lot. So going through, the existing drainage manual, a lot of it and Title 9 streets and sidewalks. There are certain things in there that are ambiguous are causing trouble with developers and they submit or construction in the field. So I've worked with staff and updated those three. So Title IX, which is streets and sidewalks. Title 16, which is titled, drainage and flood. And then the stormwater and drainage manual. I didn't attach them all because our manual on its own is 400 pages. 257 pages. That was close.
You can't, did you correct him?
Did.
Nice.
She looked at it, she goes, I'm not printing all that.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not happening.
Gotta have your facts before you start talking in front of her. Just remember that.
I do. So. What we can do is schedule the public hearing so you guys can approve it. To send it to council to. Adopt in December, but wanted to introduce them to you here. In the Dropbox are the Word documents that show and give the exact language for all of these. And this is just a summary of what all those changes were and where they're found. So like in the beginning of our streets and sidewalk, it breaks down the width and or the right of way width and pavement widths for all of our streets. And none of it matches the master street plan. Roadway widths and right of ways are off. So we updated in order to have to do the adoption. So that's part of it. There's other parts where right now it states for our section, the underneath concrete pavement for our arterial roads, 7 inches of concrete on 4 inches of base stone. Not much base stone for it. Bring them up so they're higher standards to better support our roads. A couple changes there. We also allow for roads that are steeper than fire code allows. Where I've had one propose, hey, I want to build this road, and I showed the fire department, they're like, we can't do that. So they had to go back and change it. Now it just brings up the code to match that. There's some certain design parts like the K values, just how smooth the vertical curve is. Brings up to AASHTO standards. Next one is the compaction requirements. Right now, when our construction inspectors are on site, there's requirements for the minimum compaction, no for the maximum compaction. And really it comes down to where usually it's just too dry when they did it. But somehow it met that number. It just they're causing troubles in the field getting these things approved.
Anything we should be worried about that we don't have to go through all of them, or do you want to go through all of them?
I don't know if I need to go through all of them now. I know probably next week. And certainly for the public hearing, I'll probably have to go through all of them, unfortunately.
All right. I will read them, but I have one thing that I have wanted to do for a very long time. In regards to sidewalks, there's a lot of lots that get bought, added in, the homeowner has one lot, they want to buy the lot next to them. They get a fence permit, they put up a fence and that sidewalk never gets built. I've seen that quite often. How is there a way to fix that so we don't have missing chunks of sidewalk forever?
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
I'd say, so there's one I had that.
I have one in my neighborhood if you need an example.
I know a few of them.
There were, poor dog doesn't know what to do when you get to that point. I mean,
Sidewalk and where do I go?
Use the doodle.
There are a few things I did want to discuss right off, I know. One of the big ones is for both the streets and the drainage. Right now, our bonds are set up for 100% for 2 years. It ends up being massive bonds to where, that's huge. The problem with the storm sewer, like this run of pipe, I'm not gonna have to replace all the 100 sticks of pipe. It's gonna be just this one, these, 4 sections here or so. So I want to drop that from 100% down to 50% for the 2 years. But the other part of that is right now they're bidding it at their construction cost. So they bought this pipe for $10 a foot. Well, for us to dig it up, take it out, replace it, that's really gonna cost us about $20 a foot or 15. So that's the other part is I'm changing it from 100% of the construction cost to 50%, but of the reconstruction cost.
So Alan, to make this easier for everybody, is there a way to include language? And one, I think you're dead on, the 100% is a lot. And that's a big, that imposes a lot of financial restrictions on that developer moving forward. Bentonville does 25% for 1 year. But in order for them to not have to rework all of the numbers, you review everything. Is there a way to put language in there that it shall be 50% for 2 years? And if, you know, if you have to pull the bond to fix something, you know, let's say it's 100 foot of pipe and they bid, you know, 2,000 feet and it's X number of dollars. Are you legally limited to only receive the funds for that 100 foot of pipe, or can you add language that says, you know, if a bond is executed to fix this, we're going to use whatever the actual cost it takes to fix that?
So at least for the stormwater bonds, is it says there for all those items. If I pull the bond, I can use it for any stormwater item. The big thing is I've also now made them to include, you know, the outlet structure on the pond, which wasn't on there before. And the excavation of the pond, if I have to go out and clean it out, those costs are included in there now as well. So that kind of covers some of that.
Well, I've obviously been on both sides of this fence. I just know that you're gonna have. What, you know, the typical is you take the bid amount and you roll that over to the bond amount. You know, putting excavation and final grade numbers and sod numbers on top of a pipe or whatever, there's so many different scenarios that could go into effect that would completely change the number. It's gonna be a nightmare for anybody putting that together to get a number, and probably for you to even
They
agree.
actually already do when we review them.
What do you mean?
When I review the bond amounts, the estimates they give, I mean, they have them all in there for each different size of pipe, lengths.
No, I get that, but
All that in there.
what I was taking from what you were asking is a reconstruction cost of what it would take for me to replace 100 foot of this pipe in the pipe line item, right?
Pretty much it's changing it from, if they're saying, what I've seen a lot when they get it, say, I put an 18-inch pipe. I bought it for $15 a foot, right?
Right.
So they say, oh, all right, here's 18-inch pipe, $15. Well, the problem is, if I have to go pull that bond, and what it comes in issues on smaller jobs, if I have to go pull that bond, I can't replace that pipe for the same $15.
Sure.
So saying, I mean, for us to actually, I'd be able to buy the pipe for $15. I'm gonna have to replace the stone, repave it, do all that.
But is it easier, instead of trying to get a price, because let's say it's a sewer manhole. And you just have a line item for 18 sewer manholes.
Yep.
A 10-foot sewer manhole is gonna be a lot more expensive than a 4-foot manhole. So I don't know how you quantify that, but is it easier? I'm just asking
I
questions.
break them down too, honestly.
I know, but is it easier to just get, you know, an all-inclusive bond, you know, that covers backfill, final grade, sod, curb and gutter? So when you impact that, fixing that, you can go to that line item and say, yeah, I did curb, I did this, I did that. Or just have the language that says, hey, if I have to replace this, I'm gonna pull the bond and use the amount of money it costs to actually fix that. Instead of having to try to calculate every situation that might.
So a general term like construction repair. Bond will cover all construction repair. I mean, that kind of the catch-all phrase, right? That's seed, sod, excavation.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, then we can combine them.
well, you're covering your costs, what it costs, your labor, your. guys.
The estimate is, it's just. to get the,
Yeah, no,
I understand, but
trying to do that.
I think it would be great to have verbiage on that bond. But it's to repair.
And you just make sure that, you know, like you said, it is just for the amount for the bond. It's not really attached to the bond. But you just make sure that there's sod in there, that there's everything needed for you to repair anything in there, and you should be good. I was just trying,
We know more bonding companies
just trying to make it.
bond something that general.
What's up?
Well, bonding companies bond something that general.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, they do now.
Okay.
I mean, just like you were saying, $15 a linear foot. Well, they know that covers their employee costs, their profit costs. It's all rolled on. If you go to, ABC pipe fitters, well, that pipe is actually not $15 square foot that they're bidding. I mean, linear foot. It's actually, $5 square foot. Add up all their costs to that utility. Say, this is their cost. That's why they fluctuate so much from project to project.
Did you add any freeboard requirements?
Getting to it. The one I know I wanted to go over with you. The other one is, it's actually already stated in the drainage manual, wasn't enforced before. If projects are bid in or constructed in phases, it's a subdivision, it's built phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. That bond gets renewed for each one for 2 years after the first phase of impact. So, first thing that bullets enforced. It's not stated that way in the streets bond. The whole worry is if it's finished, and for the next 3 years, you're gonna drive dump trucks over this pavement. Well, after 2 years, we let the bond go. Third year, now it's done. Fifth year, when the last phase is done, that first phase is destroyed. All kind of makes them repair if they destroyed it that way, if they're just built in phases. So we're gonna add that language to it as well.
Are you gonna make them bond the entire amount, or are you gonna limit it to streets and?
It all depends. So I mean, it pretty much accumulates on, they'll have to add it to it. Because you think if you have your pond and you going further and further up the chain,
Sure.
the runoff from here is still getting into that pond.
I'm just thinking that could be like a $1 million bond at the end of the project.
I was thinking the streets especially.
Yeah, and I totally agree with the streets. I'm just wondering if there's things that don't need to be included on that.
I mean, it's hard not to include some of those. Just because like I said, if they're gonna end up running over that same stretch, like they did this entrance, and they just keep going further and further back on it. If they're still running all their construction equipment over that same and they're end up wearing it down. And the reason why it's now worn down in 5 years rather than 20, they've been driving up that kind of vehicles. So
What about, I know your whole,
You seen the percentage?
that's exactly where I was going. Once you go 25% or less than that, if you're gonna keep the whole bond, why do you lower the percentage so it's not such a burden to the developer?
the worry is, I mean, we've already reached the 50. The big thing is from the 100. The thing I'm looking at is, all right, well. If the wear is on so much more. It all depends on what you're wearing on with that road.
But you would have bonds for,
But it's already, they don't finish building some of these subs for 4 years. That first phase has expired 2 years, like before you even started the last phase or second to last phase.
but I don't think you're really worried about the home construction, are you? You're more worried about the large, heavy equipment for the actual.
There's a lot of it, yeah.
Stuff like that, yeah. I really like where you're going with it. I'm just wondering what that bond amount is on the 8th phase of this subdivision. 10 years down the road, if they're re-upping every time.
So. It might also keep them from doing the. If you have a smaller sub, just do it in one bond too.
Good.
So. Or why a lot of them codes phases that we've seen is so they can start building homes.
Yeah.
There's some.
Cash flow the rest of it.
Yeah. So it might take some of those 6 phase projects down to 2 or 3 phases. So. I will make a note to go over and see if we want to change that to 25% renewal.
You might just look at a couple and see what that cost would actually end up being and see if you think it's enough to replace the road section. If you.
We've got a couple of phase ones right now that I think we could go look at very quick.
One I know I had highlighted, I want to make sure you guys looked at it. I think
What page are you on now?
I'm still on the first page. Sorry, that one I just talked about was 90208D. That's all the bump stuff. That's as far as I've gotten so far.
Okay.
I mean, sidewalk specs is just, replacement site and all that. Saying they have to do 5-foot sections. Right now, who does the inspections? It says code enforcement officer 16 times in this report. They actually don't do the inspections. It's our construction inspection staff. So it just puts it under who's actually gonna be doing that work and gives them more of a responsibility and allowed to do that. So there's less.
So as a general rule of thumb, and I know the Bentonville specs say mayor and or his designee, and that covers anybody and everybody. You want to put mayor or his designee. But we, so you're not specific.
But why, well,
Whatever.
change it to is,
So they ask mayor, I need John Doe at the water department to do the inspection. Well, okay, it's covered in your code. If you say the mayor or his designee. I'm just saying, I'm not telling you that, I'm just saying that's a suggestion that works for us.
what we change it to is public works department, because that's where our construction inspection is, our parks department, if they see it, our streets department. And falls under that umbrella.
But you've had employees go from streets to parks to other organizations in the city that could still be doing the same inspection, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'd say really what ends up removing would be. We're supposed to be.
I'm okay with
Ending
it.
in our actual.
I'm just saying it's been put a carte blanche, mayor, it doesn't need. covered.
Because I wrote just being public works.
Yeah, however you phrase it, I'm okay with it.
On the 90501, the driveways, that's gonna be tricky.
So. Yes, but we've looked at a lot of these to where when they're putting in the driveways, we're hitting complications with the location of some of the curb inlets. So then they're like, oh, I need a variance to move my curb inlet, or things like that. Or it's trying to amend lot lines. The one I'm having it show there is that one, but also it goes to one of the other ones when we get to our sidewalks. Is what we're saying is that some aren't being built. I'm gonna increase what's more considered what would be common sidewalks. So right now, you're on a corner lot. You don't have to build any sidewalk as the developer, unless there's a crosswalk there.
With the plat.
With the plat. And their whole thought process is the developer or home builders would destroy the sidewalk. Which I get when you have a 60-foot lot, you want to build that front 60, that's their only access. On a corner lot, they weren't even doing any of it, including like off the entrance, off our collector, down to our first driveway road. They're not even building that section. Having all those built, so having the driveway, it also establishes, hey, we don't want these driveways built in some of these, like if you have a pseudo collector inside your subdivision where it kind of cuts through as your also access off of the main road. Corner lots, it's safer to have your driveways outside, so why aren't you building that extra sidewalk along that whole run? So establishing where that driveway goes helps establish.
I just don't think it's gonna be possible a lot of the time to establish the driveway, because they don't have house plans. What if it's a developer that doesn't build the homes and he sells the lots? They don't know that, but what we do in Bentonville is we make them show them on like duplexes, townhomes, that kind of thing, where you have huge curb cuts for their driveways. And those inlet locations get real critical, and utility locations and stuff like that. But going to your sidewalk deal, what benefit does the city get from having that corner lot built if there's no resident there and it just stops, the sidewalk continues through one lot? I mean, the downside of that is it's gonna be there. And if it gets ran over and it gets busted up and it's not caught on the permit for the house, well, now we got busted sidewalk that we gotta go fix.
I'd say that sidewalk gets inspected. They have those sidewalk inspections. So any sidewalk that does get busted, they have to replace as it is. It just has that, so a lot of it gets built when the home gets built.
Pretty much all of it.
So as you go with these phases, some of these other ones, what if this one lot's not done, like I said, and it's on one of those common lots where clearly there's no driveways and it's that main route where people pedestrians are going. That's part of where you're looking at, you wanted to say if someone buys that lot, it kind of changes to where you have it to where if you're gonna buy a lot and leave it vacant, you have to build the sidewalk, then be almost common sidewalk. And this is how you help enforce is by having the developer build more sidewalk, and then the homeowner becomes a developer when he has that vacant lot that he's gonna hold vacant.
How do you pick which lots build sidewalk and which ones don't?
We're gonna go to that definition, the common one. So right now, anyone that is on like a pond lot, park lot, those are built. What's being added is that section from your main collector down to your first local intersection on those corner lots and establishing some of the more of those corner lots, more of those common paths.
There are some lots where we've already said that you can't have driveways here because you can't meet the driveway standards. Some of those are what he's talking about, like.
I just don't, if you're sticking to corner lots, I just don't know what benefit you get by making them build it. But I mean, if you think it'll help, that's fine.
Really what I look at for the most is, so you have your one main road and you have streets and streets. You have 4 streets now. And here's your exit down the bottom. You'd want to build that whole sidewalk around. It's not like you're gonna have driveways coming off the side on this road where your traffic's gonna be, and unfortunately to the higher speeds too, because they're like, there's the exit. So that's where you want the common sidewalk. You're not gonna put driveways. And now we're starting to have, all right, well, this one's built, this sidewalk's not built, this one's built, and it kind of gets it all built at the beginning. So you have those common routes.
So it's really about getting people through that subdivision that's under construction.
It's increasing the allowability for pedestrian traffic as it's being built. With those common lots. And limiting, still allowing them, their big complaint is they're worried about breaking a sidewalk when they're building the home. Still allowing them that. Availability. So. Really
Interested to see how it works out.
A lot of it's established during the plan review.
Yeah, and this is an issue that everybody faces, and there's no right way to handle it.
So a lot of these changes put significant more burden on the engineer to show them on the plans.
Right.
So
On the driveways, would it make a difference if it was based on the lot sizes? So if it was, let's say R1, or it was a state, or it was something else where there's a lot of flexibility, I'll call it, based on what those homes are gonna look like. Does it make sense to maybe not have the driveways on those plans versus like an R3 that's almost like a duplex or a townhome or something like that, where it's more rigid? Does that help? I wonder.
Well, the main one was, if you look at that, if it's a, let's just say 2.5 acres. You kind of know that, hey, I'm gonna put it on this half, so I'll still have 300 feet. But you know, also if you're looking at residential estate, you're not looking at a developer as much either.
But even R1 could have larger, right? I mean, they would have a minimum in the larger if it was mixed. So I wonder if they would know exactly where those would be.
And the other thing is, there's no way to enforce that. At all, where that driveway goes. Because now you've pulled yourself into the building permit review with every single house that comes through to make sure that what their driveway location is on that permit matches the plat. And then what happens if it's not? They build it anyway, and
The other option is what we've been seeing on some other subs is when they go for their final. When really they just have the paving down, curbs down, storm structure. Some have already cut the curb cut. For where the home's gonna go. They've already done that curb cut. And kind of gives you that same flexibility where, all right, well, there it is. And it also helps maintain where you know where you're not gonna have to worry about it. Yeah.
I'm all for it. I think you're gonna find some struggles with the more single family type stuff where they're just making lots and they're gonna sell them off. And you're gonna get engineers that just put a bed down the middle every time.
And they're not gonna match, right?
No, it's not.
Tear them up.
Sidewalks where we strictly don't want to allow driveway.
That's the main part is,
I think that.
But you also don't wanna go piecemeal and all that together, right? When you have it poured off at the same time.
yeah, really, it's like I said, those sides
It's
belong.
Street, and then they would come around and get that first you know, side, because you don't want driveways right there.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like that.
I mean, so what if you went back to, I guess if you really wanted to know, you could just have them draw where the inlets are actually at, right?
They do, but even then, I'm like, you need to confirm it's not gonna be an issue, try and determine where the drive is. A lot of it comes to your, when they're in the bottom of the sump, the throat extensions. So here's your 4-foot box. But the actual inlet, the opening extends 8 feet both directions. And your curb, sometimes for your drive 2 foot, 3 foot from that property line, or you'd be out of that curb inlet, no big deal. But now you're smack dead in the middle of that throat. That's where I kind of put more of that burden on them to make sure they're knowing it. The other part is the next part of showing that. 2 down, it's 90502. Maximum slope on the drive. We have some of these driveways that are 30%, 45%. They're steep. So putting a burden on that, and a lot of it comes to the grading plans on subdivisions. Is
Before we go on, just one above before, because we're going down, I don't want to miss this. Just a question, make sure I understand. Are we going to come up with a minimum distance from a driveway to an intersection? Because that's
Yes.
earlier.
Also, yeah, so we're also implementing that. It's not codified.
To an intersection.
That's the other part.
Have a set standard. This is a minimum.
Yes, so what we'll end up doing is that I wanted to bring up and have you guys discuss as well is that what it's gonna codify what the AASHTO recommendations are and make the minimum spacing between commercial drives 250 feet on arterials and collectors. There's a couple of unclassified roadways. Wood, Uber, that they're not even classified in our every plan, those ones that had 225. But the rest of them street, like local streets, there's no minimum. The only minimum is distance from a radius on those internal streets. We're establishing that as well. You know, to be on the far property line when available, sometimes you're not because of curb inlets. But maintain at worst a minimum of 10 foot from the end of that radius. So
Does the driveway revisions in here, does that bleed over to commercial as well?
the spacing for the driveways would, the entrances, that'd be your spacing of drives, and that's that 250 for. What I have it stated is for roads that are 40 miles under 250 feet, for roads that are 45 and over 440 foot spacing.
So can we add a section to allow us to require shared access?
Yeah.
We need that in a very bad way. The one that came through, what, last month or the month before? Yeah, you know, they're like, no, we don't want to do that. Well, we don't have the code to require that. And when it makes sense, we have to do it.
We have prevented that Harps drive right in the middle.
What's the speed limit on Main, 102? Yes, it would.
Yeah, 40.
45, yes, it would have.
Wow.
80.
Wow.
The legal speed limit.
So I also think it's important to leave it where we still have the ability to apply that shared access requirement in places that it makes sense. That might not.
Well, 45. Part of that one back is that for some lots, you want to impose a maximum number of accesses based on frontage.
I've never seen that done before.
What do you want to? There's nothing saying that for commercial frontage, you know, if combined, that's where you can require the shared access. If your commercial frontage is only feet, 600 feet. You have 250 foot spacing or 1,000 feet, so you have a quarter mile maybe. You want to limit them to a higher standard if you have more spacing, so it kind of gets some of those intersections out for the drives and have those shared accesses.
I want to do whatever we can to thoughtfully require shared access. I think we have to.
That's where I'm.
Put that on you to figure out the best way to do that.
Well, that's where I'm looking at, depending on your road frontage, you know. 100 feet. You're only allowed one. You're allowed to have two, maybe. Then that's where you want to establish that based on those limits. Like I said, it's not really ever handled too much. Yeah, it might avoid some of those.
I think where you're gonna run into it more is the smaller lots right next to each other. You know, you got 8 lots right next to each other. I mean, just like we have a ton of examples here, but I'm gonna pick one that's just outside of the city, but like where the KFC is, all that's gonna be commercial. And you know what's gonna happen there, so I don't know why you wouldn't limit that to, depending on the run, 1 or 2 drive entrances off of 102 that serve the entire chunk. With, you know, with a rear drive.
So what I can do with that spacing is. Add for commercial lots in general, regardless of speed limit. Commercial lots are required to have the 400-foot spacing or shared access.
Yeah.
How do you control it though, if there's a lot in between, an empty lot in between two developments, they have to have access, right? How do you?
So you build a driveway on the lot line and then they have to dedicate an access easement to that property. I'm sorry we're dragging this out, but I've been waiting for this moment for like 12 years.
Well, next meeting, we're talking about trees.
We,
I'm not talking about trees.
We're working on it.
Joey will. Yeah, Joey.
don't worry, Alan, I got it.
I prefer drainage and sewage. Talk about trees.
What's up, pipe material?
It's. Are you looking at the driveway slopes now?
Okay,
5.02,
I'll wait.
the one you're looking at?
I don't know, I was just asking about pipe material.
Just read through it fast when you were.
Oh. So the one right to 502 is. Putting a limit so we don't have some of those driveways that are incredibly steep. Where if you have a car, you can't make it up because of the inflection point in there. There's somewhere people don't park on it because it's steep. I mean, I know it's a very. Limited section, but I know there is one home that they rail along their sidewalk because they couldn't make it down the slope. It is. Normally it doesn't walk well, but still, they had to do that because the slope was so steep. I'd originally looked at putting it and capping that maximum slope at 12%. That is your ADA limits, a little bit steeper actually, even for your drives. Talking with the building department and talked to a builder, I already saw an issue where that doesn't really work. Because even if I limit that setback or that 12%, the developer might build at 12%, he's gonna come in and build it up. So he doesn't want to see a limit. I don't want to have it be a free for all, no limit imposed. So I took a number like 16. It's easy for me on a grading plan to look at with the setback. What that elevation changes from sidewalk to front setback. And make sure, I mean, at 16%, if they exceed 3%, I mean, 3 feet change in that 25-foot. Builder comes, they're gonna above that 16, I can already tell. It kind of puts more. Makes the developers design to what they have. If you're in a hilly area, I get it. There's some times where you can get, we'll have to go over, but that means, well, maybe you can't put in 6,000 square foot lots. Because your home has to be offset more in order to account for that slope. Maybe you have to do a 2-story home and put the garage inset into a hill or something to make it work. It makes you design for what the land is already doing as well. I see having a lot of pushback on this requirement, but some of the driveways I've seen, people can't use them. People aren't using them because of the slope.
Is that our problem to fix? That's a completely private issue. If everything is ADA compliant through the sidewalk and then at the property line, it goes there. That seems like that's on the builder and they're selling that home and that's on them. I don't want to overreach on some of these and try to limit that because I will tell you that will not even make it in a engineer's design guidelines. They're not, this is all going to be on the building permit, so.
Big thing I'd be looking at is on the grading plans. They have to show those setbacks, show those grades with all those things. Checking on those plans. But the problem is that when I do a final, it's gonna be hard to confirm it.
Yeah, but you also don't know what the builder's gonna do when they build the home. I don't think basing it on the grade at final is gonna tell you anything. It'll give you an idea of what's gonna happen, but I think that's gonna be real hard.
It gives me more allowance to make it so you don't have some of these. You're right, they might end up doing it anyway. And at least that way the road, the homes around it are set up to account for
So
it.
this could, man, I have a hard time with this one because this has the potential to increase dirt work costs a lot and start pushing that back into the lot and doing that because, typically it's a round road, come up curb, 2% to the right of way, 3-to-1 back to whatever existing is to limit that disturbance for the public. And then it's on the builder to figure out how that works, with that lot. Now, the issue that I have that everybody has is the coordination between the different lots with different builders. That's an issue that I don't know how you fix that. But I think that could, you're right, you can get a lot of heat on that. And I don't know, is it worth it?
I don't know, I just know some of these lots,
Right, but it's not, the city isn't
that hour.
liable for any of that. That's the builder selling the home. If he makes a 30% driveway, I'm not gonna buy that house.
Agreed. I mean, I don't like my driveway, but I knew it when I bought it.
Right.
Makes sense.
I mean,
That's just
I
my.
like where your head's at, man. I think you're doing it for the right reasons. I just don't want to overreach.
I'd say the other thing is, during the plan review, I can always recommend it. If it's not in the code, I can't have really have much teeth to it.
I know.
And that's where I'm more looking at having more like. No, I mean, you can easily change this. I get it. It takes designing the site to what it to naturally fit it easier.
I think it would be different if everybody graded the site to final grade where the house is gonna be built. But since you don't know really what's gonna happen, it's hard. And I promise you, if you take that out, you just saved yourself like thousands of phone calls per year.
I know.
Well, variance request coming to us.
Yeah, because now I gotta push the building back further, so now I want to see you stay with setbacks. You're gonna get.
Ooh, okay. That's one of my favorite things in here too, and you just killed it on me.
I'm sorry, man.
Like I said, I know how much flack I'll get for it putting it in, but I think we need to add something, but. And even if I put it at 25%, you have some kind of limit, but.
What if you put a general statement about driveway slopes? To give you something to fall back on to say, that's not gonna work.
Without setting some kind of standard to it. It's hard to have it.
But if you have 16, are you gonna allow some with 18 where it allows? How can you?
Big thing is how I'd be doing it is looking at the actual grading plan when they first set it up.
Yeah.
Is. From. Right away to setback. And I'm using 25 as a standard because the math is easy. 3-foot grade change. Cause that is 12%. Knowing full well, if you're talking builders, they're just gonna come down, place block for their slab. It's gonna bring it up. 16 inches.
But I'm saying if we say 16, you allow one builder to do 18, then you've lost your consistency and. Then you've lost.
There could be situations where they have to do that.
Yeah, that's one. There's gonna be situations where it's over 16.
And the one other thing I'm thinking of is Cedar Ridge, but. They've already gone through.
But you can't hold the person who builds it to 17. No, you can't hold them to the same standard if you're not being consistent across the board. So if it's not black and white, then say 16, you're breaking your own rule, right?
Yeah, cause I don't see going out and running a level on everyone as they're born.
Sure.
And I just foresee a ton of variance requests. They're gonna try to just move the house further and further back.
As I'm just thinking through this too, it might constitute a taking. In some respects, because it's not for the general public use. if we're limiting what they're able to do on their actual property.
Okay. Long ski slope.
Can we dictate what the slope is for our right of way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, with it. Absolutely.
100%. This was all outside of the.
Right. Yeah, this was going to the back of sidewalk, so at the right of way line. That's really a lot of what I had for, or all that I had for the streets and sidewalks. The drainage regulations, Title 16 are significantly less, allows us to update. The big one is it's not explicitly stated that on some of these that for projects that are right along the floodplain. When they do their analysis, they just discharge freely, have no detention, no retention. Not fall back on SWIP requirements to have them do any kind of pre-treatment. This flat out blatantly says there's no free discharge. At a minimum, you have to contain the first flush, the first half inch of runoff. Which helps pre-treat and protect all our wetlands, our floodplains and everything else.
How does that line up with the ADQ requirements?
Again, a lot of it, when they look at that, is it's water quality. This is how I'm enforcing it. But it wasn't before. It was because when you look at the discharge off-site, I am right on the floodplain and there's 1,500 acres upstream. It's better for the floodplain. The water's gone before all that gets to it. Well, now I am saying at least at a minimum, it might be better for the 100-year storm for that to all to be gone. The 2-year, the 5-year, it's not. So that's the water quality. And that's how I've been enforcing it since I've been here, is falling it back to the water quality and SWIP.
So essentially you're gonna, and it should be this way anyway.
Have it explicitly stated.
Well, but the sequence of their erosion control, number one would be sedimentation basin. And I mean, you're not gonna make them size that, right? If the basins.
Right now, yes, I mean, it's just temporary, but now temporary ones are supposed to be sized at 1,500 as a minimum. And I'm just saying, and they based on average slope, I'm saying regardless, it's just 18-15 of the slope, because that's your half inch of runoff. And explicitly stating, no matter what, you have to have that if you don't have the normal detention basin.
The one thing I strongly disagree with here is the 4-to-1.
So a lot of it is the interior pond slopes, they are at 3-to-1. They're still allowed. It's the exterior slopes at 4-to-1, the mobile slopes and everything else.
We kind of go back to the same thing though, right? Like if this is, we don't, this, in my mind, this requirement came from a time when we had drainage easements on ponds and we mowed them. Right? The city mowed them. Now, this is all, with the subdivision, with the POA property. That's kind of their baby to maintain, right? Now, if it gets out in the right of way, yeah, 100%. Is that what you're talking about?
On all of them anyway, would be 4-to-1.
On the exterior?
Yeah, I'd say if you don't put any limit on it, you're gonna get 1-to-1 slopes.
3-to-1. 3-to-1 is the standard everywhere.
It's 4-to-1's the mowable one, 3-to-1's where you start saying it's almost 2 sweeps to mow. It's that, so that's where we hold 4-to-1.
What does that help us do? Is that
it just helps stabilize the embankment as well by not being as steep.
3-to-1 vegetated should be fine, right?
Should be, but it's also, you see more of the unvegetated slopes. As the steeper you get, the more barren they get, the less when they do seed it. I'd say I can change it to this, but then if I change 3-1, I'm gonna say has to be sodded.
That's fine.
If you want to do that, but I'd rather see maintain the 4-to-1.
The amount of land that even a 4-to-1 takes up when you have a large pond is substantial. And that's why that's where I'm coming from with that. And we used to have, I mean, it's 4-to-1 right now in the code, right? Or is it 3-to-1?
It varies between, depending on which one you're looking at.
So, there used to be standard waivers on every subdivision. And it was pipe material, drop inlet type, design, and slope. of the ponds. And it was always, everybody asked for 3-to-1, just because that's standard everywhere here. So I would highly recommend that we stick to 3-to-1, but you require the sod. And typically what I see on the sod is to the 100-year water surface.
On the
And now if it's a
interior,
backside, I think that's fine too, because now you're protecting the storm sewer.
it's just gonna be that anything that's deeper than 4-to-1. Outside that, I'm gonna require to be sodded then if they want.
Just hydro seed everything else.
Want to, or I don't even care if they had spread hay and pan seed it.
Alright.
We're just checking that it grows.
Again, I think we just saved you thousands of phone calls per year.
I don't think I'd actually get too many on that.
Okay. I would call every day, Alan.
You're gonna get one, Joey. You can get.
Know where to find him.
That was a super common waiver.
Yeah, I remember that.
Not arguing either way, just,
Oh, you're back. Can you scroll down? Oh, scroll up.
oh, sorry.
Title 16, that's where we were talking about.
I gotta-
And you need me to take over?
I had to go to the restroom, blow my nose 12 more times.
The other parts of Title 16. For the MS4 inspections, keep going up, Diane.
Y'all didn't talk about anything while I was gone.
Title 16, there you go. Right now it has a penalty that regardless of if you don't meet your SWIP, it just says 200. No one cares about that. It's not gonna penalize anyone. So $200 a day, might. So just kind of adding that penalty for those that don't follow this. So that's all of your SWIP and everything else.
Should that be updating the schedule of fees right there, or is it, we're just gonna put it standalone in this ordinance?
Well, because I mean, it applies right to this and it's already in there as the fees for failure to meet. It's just kind of change, modifying what's already there to add per day. Then also has added a table from our construction inspection yet and construction inspection for their inspection fees as well, because it referenced a table that wasn't actually in the code for what those fees would be. So those have been added. Lorena and I might get together and add more. New Title 16, where it kind of goes through the NFIP and flood standards. Mainly just to what was going to end up applying to the drainage manual. And the drainage manual, there are 10 sections of the drainage manual. I'm looking at modifying 7 or 8 of them. Some are quite easy. That's where you asked about finished floors, if you've got in one. It sets that elevation and we already say for floodplains, it's 3 feet above the 100-year. For anything that's within 100 feet or adjacent to a pond, it is 2 feet. So it adds that 2 foot on there and clarifies for it. There's some design ones to where it uses the rational method, which is the least accurate. So trying to limit on some of those based on time and concentration. It's the other ones where it implies these things. But doesn't explicitly state some of these things. That some of the time and concentration in there as well, to where it gives a limit, says it shouldn't exceed this number. Well, now it's just a firm cap and removes that allowance for it. And look, decreasing the time and concentration makes it higher stormwater.
I think we're all.
Pot.
I think we're all.
Okay.
On the first section 3 about the road used as a weir, are you saying that people are trying to use an existing condition and model the curve as a weir?
Yeah, so we've had 1 or 2 that say, well, right now the road floods during a 25-year storm event. So that having it not.
They use that detention time of the curve to help.
And yeah, so they're using it, so their whole point is, I'm gonna put 500 homes in this giant subdivision. And then still let the road flood on a 25-year storm event. We've had 2 or 3 25-year storms events this year. So this just says for their detention pond. You can't use that as your release.
You're saying they're backing up out of the pond and using the road as additional storage?
Yeah, well, they'd have the pond, release and have their ditch and then just end up still overtopping saying, well, overtop before, I'll overtop now. And no, that is clearly a negative impact for all the homes you're building, let alone on your property.
That would bust the spread requirements, right? That would bust the spread requirements, or is that only 10 years?
So that's where it comes to. If there's no pipe there anyway, and you're saying it does it on the 50 or 25. And depending what road it is, yeah, it doesn't matter on the 10. So this just says it, so you can't put it in. And overtop that road. So. And then slopes, right now, we only allow 6-to-1 slopes between the homes. If you have a tertiary, where you bring the drainage from the back of your house to the front of the road. Again, there's no reason why I think it'd be steeper for that ditch, so you can actually get the depth in the fall you need.
What's about side slopes?
Side slopes, yep, on the swales going between the homes.
It just shrinks it. I like it. The last one, the minimum slope on the maintainable area, that was another common waiver we had. What are you calling maintainable area?
So at the top of your swale, which I know we don't recommend swales very often. That's it. So where your 100 years, that's, you have to have that 10-foot spot. So wherever that is on, it has to be above your 100. Where it is, you have to have that 10-foot maintainable area that if you need to go in and dredge or otherwise, you can get equipment down.
Are you talking about swales or ponds?
This is.
Okay, because it's ponds.
Well, oh, this is just swales in section 3. Ponds are later on. And it says right now only requires a 5-foot maintainable area. You can't get any equipment on that.
Is that our problem?
Problem is, the other part we have to these is you're the POA. You don't do the maintenance you're supposed to do. And now it's causing the issue on Gamble Road. On the road. We have to get in there and fix it. You should still have that maintainable area.
Maintaining private property?
It's just having that buffer area. We don't do it, but if you as the POA don't do it, now it impacts public property.
Civil
You go
property.
after-
that's a
then you go after the
civil-
POA.
that's
The
a
POA has to
civil-
fix that.
if he-
They would, but sometimes they don't.
Going back to the.
It can't go back.
How, because again, that's 20 foot of property that you're eating up for a slope or for a maintainable area on top of a pond. Again, that's not really standard anymore because we don't maintain them. And no, it's not really required anywhere else. And I really think that we're kind of jumping over into some private civil matters. That's my standpoint. If we're not the one that's maintaining it, why are we enforcing an extra 20 feet? Because we're gonna have two banks. that we need so we can maintain it.
It's not just us, it's for anyone. though. That's
I know.
what you look at. You need a way to get in, especially if you have a 3-to-1 slope
Yeah,
and your thing is 200 feet wide.
do the taking,
Right.
because that's
got
what
that
you
land.
got.
That's my concern, yeah. Is it maybe unconstitutional?
What does it currently state?
Then your intent,
It just says a 5-foot maintainable area.
So we
there's
just
tons-
changed this a couple, what,
Full discussion and changed it to 5?
And 5 doesn't do you any good, period.
Again, it's not for our use. My standpoint is, yeah, you should probably not just peak it. Maybe the 5 is what we came to last time. I'd say 5 or 0.
I'm jealous of Jeff.
Starting to order pizzas and some.
No, but no, Brian, come on.
Pass the buck.
What the heck, man?
I'm just.
I think the 5 is reasonable, but you're right, that your 5 does tracked width is way more than 5. You're not gonna be able to run on it.
So 5K to do it.
Right.
I mean, so I think we already have swales where it's 10. And those. Always.
But that's a little different.
I don't see the same, I don't see it being different. They still have to maintain those swales. I think they'll be upset if we keep it.
No.
Right, but the swales are mainly between homes and everything, right?
Rear lot. sometimes in the diversion one, so it goes around that. 10-foot buffer on that has that limit. The difference I'm just putting on the pond as well, that have that maintainable area. So that pond can be maintained. Here.
I'm against it. I'll leave it at that.
I agree.
I don't think it benefits us at all. I understand where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with you that it's a good thing to have. I just think when you go, 4-to-1 and a 10-foot path on top of everything. That's a lot of land.
No,
Because we really did just issues came from somewhere. We just came from 10 and we changed that.
I think 10, that was a huge mistake.
I don't think
No,
so.
no, I think we're all on board that that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But
I think we're getting.
for us to.
We're not legally can do it. I think-
Private
I get it.
property.
And we're not legal about doing it. How can we?
Kind of like you can't, a car goes out with swerving, drunk driver and intended phone, whatever. You can't. You can't have a phone in your car type deal,
Well, if you're trying to say we can't do 10, then we can't enforce 5.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Well, you're saying that, and that's where I'm like,
Suggested was actually 0.
So
You have to have some type of buffer. You're gonna have the house right on. We used to have ponds that went right to the lot line, and then the back side would slope onto an adjacent lot. There were way too many issues with them ponds, that they don't build them right.
No.
And then there's nothing they can do.
Is that, again, is that the city's fault or the developer and the builder's fault? And what,
It is, but then they can't get her, you can't get her right on this pond. If you don't have some type of.
if you don't require, then they're not gonna do it all, and you're not gonna have any maintenance done, and you're gonna have more issues.
And then they don't wanna mow it, so they just leave it.
Have we had any issues since the last time that we changed it?
Code enforcement issue and they get cited and taken to court and the owner will have to maintain it.
I don't know. And we have to- That's I think.
Yeah. You're not see that happening either, that's the problem. And that's where, I mean, I've had somewhere, yeah, they're not maintaining it. Or there's issues and they're taking so long to develop. So we go in, we gotta do it, and then just put the lien on all the properties. Do all that, and same thing is to have some kind of maintainable area. I'd say, saying regardless, so then it's not our property, do not do anything and don't let them do whatever they want. That's the whole point of these standards, is it
I'm not saying that.
uniformity allows them to do it. So if you're more concerned is the width, the length, that's where I'm going into that too, the width. So to me, if to have a maintainable area used so you can do maintenance on the pond, regardless who does it, 5 foot can't cut it.
Well, now, if we're talking about maintenance here. Are we talking about catastrophic rebuilding of the entire pond?
No, you're looking at needing to place riprap, clean out, dredge your pond, depending on what it is. So you can access, you can go around that pond, clean it out if you need to.
Can't you go in the pond?
It all depends. If some of these, if they're wet ponds. Start looking at all these different buffers, and that's where you establish that zone.
Bigger track hub. I mean,
So you need a bear track hoe, but you're gonna put it on a 5 foot, so now you're. And
whether you stand on the other side of the berm and just dig. I mean, because you're not,
Still going uphill, and now you're 20 feet up, here's your 10-foot maintainable area to get to the bottom, that much slope on.
Technically, we can only maintain to a right of way line, right? So.
we shouldn't be in there in the first place, yeah.
But it's when they don't do it and it needs to be done because of the detriment to the city.
I understand what you're saying. I'm saying I think not, I think it's a civil matter. You get a violation. Right? Somebody's doing damage to somebody else. It's a civil matter.
I'm saying 5 feet or
I have a hard time having,
No.
how that's not part of the city's problem when it's not city property.
A lot of this, you're seeing how many drainages. How much. I can making it better.
Tony, do y'all go clean out private ponds?
The code enforcement is citation. That's how we.
All of it.
That's how we're.
Does that resolve it? So how long after you do that does that now get taken care of? Bank washed out too.
No, take care of.
All right, so this failed, it's a citation, it failed.
Well, what happened? We
So
had,
how long does it take to get them fixed? That's where I'm looking at is. It's having that availability if it's needed. So you have a pond that collapsed and now. I Street's flooded
several,
and you can't pass I Street.
you know, let me tell you, several years ago, we had this issue up in northeast part of Bentonville. Basically, the developer built homes on unsuitable field. Half of the back, I guess, yard slid off. And it came back on the developer. He got sued and they actually had to reimburse. Basically about the house and everything. So it was a civil matter again. It was a long time, don't get me wrong, it didn't happen overnight, it had to go through the civil process. But the city did not, you're toward immune.
Probably,
I
they probably
mean,
signed the POA and the
we're-
members of the POA.
So if you would have got involved, Tony, you'd be implicated in that lawsuit.
If we
As
took
having-
action,
as having
I
tried
don't
to
see
repair
how
it.
we can go and take city equipment on private property.
I'm looking at some of these where they build a pond, the embankment washes out.
Yeah.
Now we're having flooding issues downstream. POA is not gonna get to fix it.
Somebody
Already
owns,
was-
somebody owns that lot though, Alan. Somebody owns that lot and somebody is responsible.
POA owns it, POA is responsible. They meet once a year. They're not gonna fix it. It's gonna take 2 years now to fix. So rather than us going in and fixing the problem and putting a lien on it. So we can fix it, we're just let it be a problem and everyone downstream's impacted. We're not gonna do anything.
How often does this happen?
Happened twice since I've been here.
But why wouldn't we then issue citations to the POA daily until it's fixed?
It's $20 and they don't care.
$20 a day?
Well, let's up the fine in the code.
Yeah, I mean, you issue that citation to the POA, I guarantee you, if it hits them where it hurts, they're gonna go to after the developer.
But how many POAs don't exist?
Is off.
Exactly.
A lot don't exist.
Somebody owns,
Somebody still owns the lot.
somebody owns a lot.
Again, to me, you're going from,
That's a civil matter.
enforce this, we can't enforce that. I mean, that's where these do allow us to enforce that and have that design set up to where there is that area.
Okay. We can keep going back and forth on this. I don't think anybody's agreeable to up the maintenance thing when we just decreased it a couple of years ago. So we can leave it and we can talk about it at the public hearing. That's fine. I mean, it is what it is. So keep going because we gotta get through these.
A lot of these are just allowing more freedom with variances. So they don't have to go to you. Right now, minimum pipe size 18 inches or equivalent. There's some of these when they get up top of the pipe network. That 12 inches far exceeds what they need for capacity. But they're not allowed to, and they can't do the 18 and cover, and it ends up affecting everything downstream. I want to be able to say, I can allow 12.
Can you make it case by case?
Yeah, it'll say, they say, these are just summarized what's on there. If you look at the actual Word doc later, which I'm hoping y'all do. It says, based on approval from the engineer, written approval from the engineer prior to doing it.
Well, I think, the intent with the 18 inches to decrease blockages, right?
Decrease, just to make it easier to clean.
You see any issues doing the 12?
In there.
Some, not all. I know of 2 or 3 scenarios where having the 12-inch. I have a cubic foot during a 100-year storm.
Right.
And we're putting an 18 in. It's super.
Super blocks is going right down to the.
Yeah, it's super over designed and this gives them more freedom. And also, now we have the cover we need under the street. Because they're making weird humps in the road because of it. So, cleaning, that's that perimeter thing. The other part I was gonna say is safety. It's already written in there where you guys can require fences around any ponds. Now I'm just saying, if you want to use 3-on-1 for your slope, you have to put a safety fence.
That was one thing that we were talking about. It's already been approved.
That way it kind of says 4-1, which is the recommended. If they go steeper, you have to put the safety fence in, rather than just when you guys recommend
You
it.
think that discourages maintenance at that point?
All depends on where you put it too.
Well, it-
To me, that
Around the pond.
10-foot maintainable area is inside the fence. Or 5 foot.
Let's just assume we're gonna go to 5 foot.
Assume there's 5 foot or no maintainable, 5 foot's on a free for all 4-1 anyway. That's your maintainable area. So. Then it doesn't matter where you put the fence, doesn't discourage. To me, it's that safety factor.
Of what?
Keeping people out of the ponds with the steep slopes.
In
They
a
get wet. They
dry pond, like.
Okay, I'm okay for the safety, but here's the thing, are we not discouraging the use of green space during the non-rain events? You're keeping people out from potential use of 33 acres of green space.
One slope.
I understand, but there's been an argument.
It's just the sides, Larry, and you can get in the bottom.
That
Soccer.
can play their soccer practices. I mean, I've seen it several places here. They're practicing in the ponds.
I've seen them and we've also seen about taking them out. Too. Again, it's that having them in there. Some of these dry ponds, how dry do they ever get? Clearly this year they would have been dry.
Yeah, we sure wouldn't want.
That is-
Well, a lot of that,
I mean, we specify what type of fences. I mean, we don't want barbed wire, we don't want wood.
it says wrought iron.
So
And it gives specs in there with. Spear you can put through the bottom bar. So it's also more of a decorative fence. So. I just
yeah, I definitely define fence.
I'm for no fence.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yes, but if we're gonna put fence, I'd definitely put our requirements right.
All right, I'll just leave it the way it is, already saying that you can recommend whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm okay with even chain link, but I understand people don't like chain link. And they're easy to scale anyway. You're gonna keep people out.
Everybody can't jump a chain link.
Bonds. That's the requirement. The other one, I don't know why it got added. They explicitly stated that you can't use precast concrete structures. There's no reason why you can't. It just usually speeds up construction.
You had one on section 3 that says remove the non-allowed CMP.
Oh, so on there, we don't allow you to use corrugated metal pipe, but we still have all the specifications in there for your Manning's roughness coefficient, and things like that for CMP. Just getting the reference to CMP out.
Okay, I thought you were gonna allow the CMP.
No, yeah, no.
Are we gonna allow any HDP?
HDPE is allowed outside the roadway. RCP and high density HP pipe are required under road beds.
Sure.
If you want to use RCP or HP outside, cool. So that's already in there. Bond work. Clean up the ambiguity. There's one where I had an issue where we flat out say that pipes have to be sized for design storm event. But then it gives you an exception for, well, you don't have to, you can do this. And I've had one engineer fight me on it already. So now I'm getting rid of that loophole. Where no, you have to design your storm network for a design storm event. So. And also the other one says the hydraulic grade line.
What are you considering underhead?
So if you're saying you're
Out of
pipe has, they check your pipe capacity without being surcharged. So where it's just your flow, if you're 100% full pipe. Without having water stacked ahead to add or stacked above your outlet, produce that head during your storm event. Your capacity is.
No surcharge in the manholes.
Yeah. So if you're that way, the pipe's designed for 25 CFS when it's not, doesn't have that pressure on it. It makes sure that you only have 25 CFS going to that pipe. During the 10-year storm event.
Yeah, I got you.
So obviously during the 50 to 100.
I don't know that I've seen that anywhere else. If it doesn't come out of the inlet, what is, other than extra capacity in larger rain events? What's the point? If we wanted to up the design storm, it seems like that's what we would do.
So we already have it stated that, I mean, it says your design capacity should be, the way it's there is approximately equal to or greater than the proposed flow. That's how it's phrased. And then must have the capacity. And then goes back to approximately equal or greater to, and then gives you an exception for it with the hydraulic grade line where it's not coming out. pretty much I'm taking rid of that 4-year design storm event. That loophole for not meeting that capacity. So during your 10-year storm event, you're not gonna have any backlog or backflow or stoppages in your flow. It just goes to the pond.
I think you're gonna get a lot of pushback on that too. Because what is your capacity doesn't include your storm boxes? Because your storm box is part of
Your
your,
flow capacity. So, yeah, I mean, if it's just sitting in your box, that's not your flow capacity.
but what I'm saying is. The capacity underground includes your manholes.
Your storage capacity. But not your flow capacity.
Does it say flow capacity in the code right now?
Your storm sewers, it's all your storm sewer flow.
I think. Nobody else does it that way. I think it's better, probably, for everybody in the long run. I just think there's gonna be some pushback on that, dude, for sure.
I've only had one engineer try to push back on that. They've done it on 2 different jobs. The other ones are like, oh, sorry, good catch. That makes sense. Because it's always for the 10-year storm event.
What was the one pushback?
It's that the capacity says it is at the pipe flowing full can only hold 8 cubic feet per second. But we're proposing during your 10-year storm event, we're gonna be throwing 10 CFS to it. So you're having 2 that are staying back on that storm on its own. Your hydraulic line is still,
Water holds in the box instead of just straight through. It's like extra.
so it also impacts what can get into that end. So it just changes that requirement to now where it gives that where, you know, for their design storm, it handles it.
Okay.
And the other one is with that hydraulic grade line with where that section was, it says that it always has to be 2 feet from the ground. It was approved by the engineer. 2 foot's ridiculous. I still want your water to come up out of the inlet during the 100.
So you're gonna raise it to the gutter?
Raise to the gutter for the 100 or a 2 foot on the design as they've been doing. That's what I've been approving every time, saying that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Now I'm just putting it in the code.
What do you mean 2 foot on design?
The requirement or it states right now is your hydraulic grade line in your inlets has to be 2 foot below the gutter or ground, depending on where it's located. During your design storm event, the 10-year typically, or 25, if you're a collector.
What if you don't have 2 foot of cover?
Then it's or is approved by the engineer, and I've always just been saying,
To the gutter?
I'm just saying to the gutter on the 100. On some, you can't even do that, it's or is approved, that's still being in there, but just make sure that. What I've always been doing, so they don't have to keep asking, what does or is approved mean? What does or is approved mean? This gives them that straight standard that they can, okay.
So why, you're gonna require the HGL stay in the box during the 100-year?
Based on flow capacity, yeah, it doesn't account for. The ponding already from getting in.
Are the changes that you're recommending here, and again, some of this is above my pay grade. Are you bringing this? Are you bringing this up to what the other cities around us are doing? Or are you exceeding what Bentonville, Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers are doing?
Exceeding on some of
These
these.
are exceeding, so I think it's a little iffy, in my opinion.
Big thing is,
Now,
how many complaints do you get for the drainage?
it is better. It is better.
These aren't. Hard to achieve goals either. Usually I see them and I'm like, here, just do this and that fixes a lot of it. Here's this one spot, here's an easy fix.
I mean. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of sometimes is, you know, yeah, you can probably fix it just by altering your slope a bit. You know, or.
There's sometimes where you're not gonna do that. Where you,
But this gives them a lot more leeway and it just puts it in code what or as approved means when you look at the HEL. The other part's already codified. I'm just adding the extra clarification, so that one actually takes phone calls away from me.
I just wanna make sure we're gonna work with people when we have to.
Yeah, if you actually go through and read the whole drainage manual, skipping the table, so it's only 100 pages. It says or is approved by a city engineer.
2 dozen times.
Right.
Okay. So. So it does give you, it's just not cheap. But it gets rid of some, and like I said, allows some other ones, like you said, with eliminating that 18-inch minimum.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm asking is because growth, I want to be welcoming to our developers that are coming that are saying, well, you guys are exceeding what we're doing down here. And so if it's developing here and developing there, I just want to be welcoming to that. And so if you're saying that you are including that space that says,
Part is I'm looking at, we're resolving standards. You're similar with the other areas are, or other cities in the area, but you are so far below requirements throughout the United States. Other developed areas.
Okay.
And that's where I've seen
that's
significantly more flooding issues here than I have anywhere else.
That's great.
Trying to get some of those and correct some of those as I go. And that's again why a lot of it I hold the engineer more accountable. It's not like these are hard to meet requirements.
Well, I think the 100-year is a hard one, because now you're basically designing the storm system to the 100-year.
But if your 10-year already meets, then you're good. It's or.
It's or?
It's or.
Oh, I didn't see that part, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's or. So I mean, if the 10 years already there, so it makes it so the pipes are sized, so it works.
Right.
On a lot of events. So on some of these, once it meets in the 10-year, you're good, done. I don't even check the 100-year.
So they could surcharge in the 10-year if the 100's contained within the inlet.
Done.
Perfect. That's, yeah, that's fine. That's a good, that's an option.
Next time I suggest that you and Joey get together.
I mean,
So
Just,
that's the whole thing is I wanted to do this. I'm gonna do this whole thing next week for the city council too, and they're not gonna be as happy. But the whole point is, so introduce it here. We all agree, so next time we can at least discuss. But my hope is the Monday before council, before your meeting, and the Monday there after the council meeting. I will be here so I can go through all this with everyone again. Whoever wants to actually get the final wordage before.
You send it out.
Or are you gonna have like a
All this will get sent out. after go.
city council, planning commission?
It's just gonna be more of a review if you wanna sit and talk and go through each word by word. But after today, after we set the public hearing for December, I'll put all this out. You'll have all the word docs. You can- It shows exactly the verbiage. This is kind of.
Well, I think that was my question. Do our bylaws allow for electronic discussion
Electronic discussion.
on this kind of, I'm trying.
Because of doing a
Between,
Word doc,
between him you can, but not
between each other. We can.
Yeah, but
We can
but when-
collaborate on a.
communicate individually with him, but
because it's in a Word doc, I have it so you can track changes and you can turn them on and off. So you can see exactly what I changed, deleted. And it shows whatever color in the data when I did it. So you can turn it off, so you just see the final. And I'll say, here's what it is and see who did that. So if you want to look at and add those comments, say, here's how I think I want to phrase instead. Send it back, say, hey, I looked at this, I like these, I want you to look at these ones. You can be able to do that and say, here, you'll be able to type in there, it'll track. Now, will everyone be able to see that? No.
I will read it. I will read it, Alan, when you send it out, buddy.
What about comment?
We needed this. We need,
We're gonna have this out for public comment,
Yes, so,
not just saying, hey.
Discussion.
yes, so
Council.
after this is, we said that public hearing is, it'll get advertised, have a 16-day, or something available to the public to see if they want to come pick it up. Or by email and PDFs.
That makes sense.
we'll have to put something.
One available review in city hall as well.
Can I ask a request? Can we send this to local firms and just get developers, get feedback on it?
That was gonna be the next part too, is I'd send you, because it helps if I need to make these, so I already talked to the one builder with the driveway slopes. And made that one change from at least 12 to 16. Now, fortunately got rid of it, but
I still think it's a good idea. I think it's a safety issue for them to be too steep. They can't see parking on the street.
Right, it is. But unfortunately, we don't want to be involved in the safety issue.
And they built them in 1960 in Bella Vista and they still exist today. I'm
And
not saying
so,
I agree with it, but
It makes so much
they still exist today.
the driveway with your garage and then
You're exactly right, but it's not our place to dictate a private property owner, as long as they fit our.
And when we start doing that, somebody's gonna say, well, 16% isn't safe, and then you get sued because they think 16% isn't safe.
Maybe it's for emergency services to be able to get up in the driveway.
They don't use driveways.
They don't- Yeah.
Just roll them down the hill.
Roll them down the hill. They already got wheels.
Greystone, you guys.
Already in bad shape.
Everybody's got.
All right, Alan, anything else?
I need you to set the public hearing.
Goes to their driveway. And it's not in the driveway. Everybody has-
We don't need a motion for that. We can just set
I
it.
need you to say we'll have a public hearing on.
I think our attorney.
Doing 12-6, we doing 11-15.
But Alan, you're gonna send this, for, and here's electronic discussion with you.
And they, 11:15.
Hold on. We have one meeting so we can try to finish.
So,
Yes, we can have a public hearing on 12-6.
but yes, I will email this out. I will ask on the 15th. Are there any things you want to discuss before? Where I'm not gonna go through this. I just want to hear from you all, or unless I get feedback from developers or engineers. You know, here's their comments.
Good.
That's good. That way you'd also have people.
Something else we need to try to resolve, or was that the discussion because?
And
Well,
get into it further.
And it's my position that there's not gonna be a statutory authority on it. This is gonna be on a case by case basis. And it would take a lawsuit if someone were to sue to determine whether or not it actually was a taking or not. But it appears to me, based on what I'm hearing, that it really seems like it's leaning on in that direction. So that's where, I mean, the law can be great.
Then they shouldn't come and complain to us about any.
All right. There's a council meeting on 8. Next planning commission meeting is 11:15 and I will not be here.
Be here.
Oh, no.
Make sure we have. a quorum.
And John won't be here, so will you make sure that others. Specifically Craig, because he's not here tonight, but make sure he's gonna be here. Because we'll be down 2. Just make sure.
Five or six,
How many
what's the
have we?
quorum?
Have 5?
You'll be here.
No, it's-
So he's gonna run the meeting.
5, right?
Yes, I think
5 or 6.
better,
Right, I mean, we gotta have at least a minimum there.
4 is better for the next meeting.
As a tie vote, you don't want 6. 5 or 6.
Thanks for all the public hearings, Jeff.
I've already complained to staff. I've had this vacation plan since May.
This is the first I'm hearing of it. You didn't.
Did I tell you?
Like this, at the end of the year, everyone's trying to. Everything.
So I would definitely encourage everyone to review ahead of time to make the meeting flow as best that it can.
The notices are all posted on the website.
There are a number of public hearings, so and I know we always have a debate about what's the right number, but there is a tech review on 11/17. I hate to ask, but is there anything else?
As you ask.
You all have the calendar for 2023.
Yes, thank you for saying that early. If there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second. Anybody opposed? Under that schedule, if you need things that you could go do. Things.
No, the-